Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it. Our Father, who art in heaven. Seriously? What the actual fuck?
Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi friends, Kate here. Just wanted to remind everyone that we will be back soon with our usual lighter and more fun discussions on a new television show in the very near future. But first, Aubrey and our friends are going to wrap up their brilliant post-show analysis of The Handmaid's Tale in this episode. Also, I just want to remind everyone we set up a new online gift shop that will hopefully entertain you. The products are for sale as well, but window shopping will hopefully make you laugh a little. If you don't follow us on Instagram, reconsider that maybe, because it's the easiest way to see these announcements as well as our new show announcements. And then once we do a new show, Kimberly is all over it with daily updates and beautiful content from the show. Over to Aubrey.
So today we're going to get into redemption and villainization arcs, some inconsistencies in the final season of the show, and we'll be discussing quotes from the two books, The Handmaid's Tale and The Testaments. We'll also have a few final personal statements before we close out. Though our podcast began in 2021, a lot of us have followed the show since the beginning in 2017. So it's bittersweet to be saying goodbye to it now, both individually and as a group. We're always going to feel disappointed that the original show that brought us together, and the one that a lot of us considered to be our favorite show of all time, ended the way that it did. But we're honestly relieved now that it's over to be moving on to other things. Thank you all so much to all our listeners for sticking with us through to the end. We love you all. So before we get started on our final discussion about The Handmaid's Tale, let's do a round of introductions for today's panelists.
Hi, I'm Julia.
Hi, I'm Scarlett.
Hi, I'm Raquel.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Aubrey.
So let's dive in, as we say.
Yes. So Rachel is going to start us off today with her closing statement about Nick.
I didn't love Nick because Max was attractive. I absolutely hate it that people assume this all the time about Nick fans. I've mentioned many times that Nick's actions in Season 2, Episode 9, Smart Power, was what really made me love him. I bring this up again because that was who I believe Nick was at his core. Not just a good man, but a better man than most. I had never seen a man depicted as more honest and selfless on a TV show in my life, and I may never see anything that extraordinary again. In the series finale, when June said Nick led a violent and dishonest life, I thought of this moment, that moment of complete selfless love and honesty, also remembering the risks to his own life that he took in that episode to get the letters from Jezebel's out. Truly, no words could have been further from the truth of Nick's character than what June said about him in the finale. And certainly some consideration and acknowledgement of the depth of his love for her and Nicole, the risks he took for them, and an appreciation for how kind and gentle he could be despite the violent world he lived in, should have been mentioned to convey the multifaceted complexity and nuance of Nick's character. Because one thing he was not was one-dimensional. It wasn't that we, as viewers, didn't realize that Nick's life carried on in between the few instances we saw of him on screen. But why would we assume that he was acting in drastic opposition to how his character was portrayed when we did see him? Not just because we saw him being a good and kind man, but because we often saw him being extraordinary. In addition to the example I just gave, Nick also risked his life twice to help June and his daughter escape Gilead. Nick gathered intel on Hannah before he was asked. Nick delivered Fred, June's rapist, to her directly so she and former handmaids could enact their revenge. These actions aren't just good, they are extraordinary. They are actions beyond what we are used to seeing from people in general on TV and probably in our real lives as well. So why should we have assumed or even considered that in the off time that we don't see Nick, he does a complete 180 and turns into an evil Gilead mastermind like Dr. Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde? The executive producers actually expect us to believe that? Fans of Nick believe he's a good man because a good man is what we saw time and time again. At worst, we saw Nick become a little too comfortable in his life in Gilead. But unless I saw it with my own eyes, I don't believe he was voluntarily enacting Gilead evil. Finally, even if there was an element to Nick's character that had an allegiance to Gilead that wasn't shown on screen previously, that is no excuse for treating his character as a one-dimensional villain in the end who deserved a meaningless death, to be thought of afterwards with only contempt by June, who he loved so much and did so much for. And most importantly, to not even be spoken of to his daughter at all. Not only did he die, but his memory was tarnished and seemingly erased for June and Nicole. This is what hurts me the most. In the end, we were left with nothing of his complex, compelling character and this beautiful love story that touched us so deeply.
It's so depressing.
It's
so
awful.
true. It is so depressing.
That's the first time I've been able to do that without crying. It normally makes me cry
man.
towards the end when
Yeah.
I read those last
Oh my
few.
gosh, man. Way to fuck it up in a couple of episodes.
They had something so amazing. We keep saying the same things over and over, but like they had like this wonderful, amazing thing and absolutely destroyed it. I just will never understand that.
Nope. So now we're going to get into redemption arcs.
So for seasons, we experienced the cruelties of certain characters towards others, which are mainly in that regard of redemption arcs that we got presented in this season are, of course, Serena, Aunt Lydia, and Commander Lawrence, I think. I also think it's necessary to, again, point out what those cruelties were, because I still think that a lot of people are forgetting about these things because they just tune in for a season. And we also, in the previously on The Handmaid's Tale, we get not presented those things. We get certain clippets from past episodes, but not really that much that was presented in previous seasons. So yeah, maybe we can start with Serena on that regard to, again, be reminded of her cruel actions, especially towards June, which are putting her into a 2-week isolation for not being pregnant in season 1, slamming her head against the door frame while she was being pregnant, actually, threatening Hannah's safety if she would not comply. Then also, of course, in season 2, episode 10, letting her get raped by her husband to induce labor.
She planted that seed in Fred's mind.
The last ceremony episode, yeah. So we see that. We see these actions. We see it happening within the episodes. This is not something the writers tell us or we need to get explained, because we see those scenes. They are presented to us on a platter. They traumatized us only watching them. They are burned into my mind, and many of us, hopefully. So yeah, these are actions of Serena. I don't know if you do have like one that I missed.
I just, for me, the two that really come out are the rape, obviously, of June when she was 9 months pregnant, and when she paraded Hannah in front of her, especially the first time when she locked her in the car. I think that was just extremely cruel. And we obviously saw that scene with all the feels and everything that it entailed. I know it was at the beginning of the show, but it's kind of hard to move past that when everything else that we got in following seasons, it maybe wasn't as cruel, but there wasn't really a change or an evolution, at least from my standpoint, to her character.
Yeah, and particularly in the scene we're saying about locking her in the car, which is a season 1, episode 10. The scene where June tells Nick that she's pregnant and then Serena walks in on them is right before she takes June to be tortured, essentially, in the car, watching Serena interact with June's daughter, Hannah. Nick asks if they need the car, and Serena very clearly intentionally does not have him drive them there, because she knows that this is not something that Nick would be
okay with.
Yeah, that he would sit by and let this happen, or that he would be able to, he wouldn't be quiet about it, probably. So I think it's interesting to note that she was extremely manipulative and aware of what she was doing. And that's another piece of evidence there, that she knew how traumatizing this would be and did it to June with that premeditated full knowledge of how disgusting this was to do.
She also didn't have to do it. She didn't have to be this vicious
to
June. But that's, for me, that's the only power Serena had. And while I can understand that she was a victim of the system that she pushed,
it's another thing we see. We see her go on those promotion tours of her book. This happens in the show as well. We see it. That's the scene where she gets shot by someone who is against what she's promoting. But it's the world that she created, that she wanted for women. But like maybe not as cruel as it turned out in the end, but
I just think that as long as she would have had the upper hand, or she would have had some sort of power, she would have been okay with it. And we even see it this season. Like she does want to soften the Handmaid situation. She doesn't, like, once they retire, But the handmaid system is still going to be happening,
Mhm.
not in New Bethlehem, because that's where she's going to live, and she doesn't want a handmaid. So I don't see there is an evolution. Yeah, there's a growth, but it's not enough for me for her to get redeemed the way that she's being redeemed in the show.
Yeah, but also the question is, like, after marrying Wharton, I think does she then again live in New Bethlehem, or is she, because she moves in with him? Does he live in Boston? Does he live in DC? I'm like a little confused about that part.
I think he says he was looking for a house in Boston and they would spend their time in both locations, like split their time.
Yeah, she just says that she doesn't want to go deeper into Gilead. So she didn't want to go to DC.
Yeah, and she only married him because he promised her that she could read and he would help change the things, which he doubled down on the exact day they got married and brought in a handmaid, which then pushed her over the edge because, as you just said, Scarlett, that she didn't want to go back to feel powerless, to be just that wife again and to have a handmaid situation again after the two she had before. Not the one, she said. No, she had actually two. The first one hung herself.
Yeah, she forgets about the first. Yep.
Yeah, even though she was responsible for her death in a way too.
I think it's also important to point out that Serena is only showing any kind of, in quotes, growth around the handmaid system when she is able to have her own baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like she suddenly had a change of heart and realized that this was evil without getting what she wanted first. So I don't know that she would have come to this place of being against having a handmaid if she wasn't able to have her own children.
Oh, definitely. I don't think.
And she kind of says that's the first thing she says to Wharton in the house in season 6 when the handmaid is there. She said, yeah, exactly. I'm fertile. Like, why do we need this? So if she wasn't, would she be okay with it?
It's like her speech in the wedding. You know, I had a handmaid. I could have been nicer. We could have been nicer to each other. And I know that she has forgiven me. What? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, we can even stop a frame in this season where June is in her house, reads her script of her new book. And it's the same thing she says about handmaids. Again, like, they are essential for Gilead's system. Like, she doesn't say, oh, it was the cruelest part of the whole thing, or I cannot understand how this could ever be incorporated. No, she said that it was a necessity.
And adjustments needed to be made from both parts.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the women that were kidnapped and raped every month, but also for, you know, I guess the wives that put themselves in that situation, because the wives agreed to this. Some were better than others, because we saw, like, in the show, there's Eleanor and there's, you know, Naomi at the end. She did a solid. Emily in season 1 said, you know, we saw that conversation with that wife that was putting off the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
So there were people that were in the system, trapped in the system, that had to comply because they were there for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But they still tried within their capacity not to harm other people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Serena was not that one.
No.
Definitely.
Do we want to talk a little more about Serena's maybe backstory and history?
I think when we see, like, Serena's history, we saw her mother, I think it was season 3, after she got her finger cut off, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we see her mother basically telling her, you know, like, you're nothing without Fred. In this world, you are nothing without Fred. Like, you have to go back to your husband, which is a very traditional mentality with what she was pushing. I mean, and she was right. In this world, she couldn't have been anything without a husband. That's what Gilead is anyway. But then this season, we saw her relationship with her father. It didn't seem like she had a bad relationship with her father. It seemed like she loved her father very, very much. And I guess her father also loved her very, very much. We don't know how that marriage went because we didn't see it. So I don't know if her mom was, like, she got along better with her father than with her mother, if that was the dynamic. But that was kind of the impression that I got from both, like, seeing the backstories that we were presented with. But she comes from, obviously, a religious background. Her father was a pastor. She has her beliefs. That's why everything turned the way that it turned. But she comes from a high class, just like most people that are in the power structure in Gilead. They are high class. There are friends of friends that probably went to Ivy League school together. You don't see anybody that's lower class that's a commander. At least it's not presented. And I think that when we start watching the show, it's kind of like the first 5 years of Gilead.
Mm-hmm.
So these are like the people that were sons of Jacob, their wives, their friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think her upbringing, her religious upbringing had a lot to do with the way she carried herself. Even though she wanted a traditional lifestyle, you could see that she was not traditional at all. She was, like Julia said, she was doing the book tours. She wrote the book. Fred was the one behind her, pushing her. And Fred wouldn't have gotten to be where he was without Serena. But as soon as he got that taste of power, he threw her under the bus.
Yeah.
And that resentment, we saw that resentment throughout, all the show until Fred died.
Going back to what you were saying about her class and everything, she definitely has a very privileged position to start off with.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a white upper class woman with, means and money and
education.
Yeah. And I think it's in after the bombing with Cushing, Commander Cushing, she says something about how they traveled together and things like that. So she was in with all these rich
rich people.
Yeah.
Friends of friends, golfing together, country clubs, and that's kind of like the vibe that I got.
Yeah.
And even that when she gets shot, we see Fred. I don't doubt that Fred loved her very, very much at first, like before everything went to shit. I also think he used her, but I think he did love her. He just loved power more. But when he's crying because he almost loses her, she's the one that tells Fred, be a man.
Yeah.
She's the one that pushes that toxic. I mean, he was already a toxic man, but I think that pushed him towards that toxic masculinity that we kept seeing in Fred throughout the season, that he was present.
Yeah, I mean, you see her manipulating Fred even when he does have power as a commander in situations where she, makes little comments to him that she knows are going to get under his skin, like about Nick and June, and getting Fred to marry Nick to a child to get rid of that problem for Serena, and then pushing him to rape June. It's like she is the instigator on a lot of these things.
She was an instigator. She knew about the takeover. She knew about it in that scene in the movie theater. It's Fred, the one that's like, there's going to be a lot of suffering.
He's hesitant. And
she's like, well, we're already suffering, or something like that. I don't have the exact line, but
yeah,
she was more gung-ho for it than what Fred in that scene. So
yep. And pushing her narrative to make it happen. There are also things, just thinking back through all the damage Serena left over the seasons, when I think it's in the episode when June finds out about the first Offred, not finds out that she's dead, but finds out, I think it's when she's in the closet and sees the writing on the wall. She says, how did you survive her, in her voiceover? So she didn't survive her, but June doesn't know that at that point. But it's just another piece of evidence showing that Serena was being intentionally cruel to these women and pushing them to mental breaks and abusing them with no remorse.
No remorse at all.
Yeah.
Not until the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even real remorse in the end. I mean, at least not at the wedding, I think.
Oh, no. What I mean is, like, and I think I said it in a past recording, that last scene between Serena and June.
In episode 10 of 6.
Episode 10, okay.
I mean, I know Yvonne's portrayal of Serena has been excellent.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment when she's saying that she's not asking June for forgiveness, I think that was the key. I think that's why the scene kind of moved me a bit. It's because she's not asking to be forgiven. She's saying that she's sorry for the horrible things she did. And in that moment and in that scene, it felt genuine, the way that I saw it and the way that it was presented.
I think that's true, but I do think they walk back on it a little bit in the scene with her, with Noah, her very last scene.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where she's kind of having the same feeling that I think she had in season 5, like it was all worth it because I have my son now. Everything I did, and
I'll do it again.
Yeah, I would do it again. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we have Raquel, who is going to talk about the books, about The Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments, and some of the differences between the book canon and the way the show went. So she'll be popping in to give us that context when different subjects come up that have solid book references in the original text.
So people have been talking about how Nick fans only like Nick for his looks. But it was the showrunners that decided to cast the stunning Yvonne as Serena Joy, a menopausal woman ridden with arthritis and a limp. It's almost like the male showrunners wanted a pretty woman to rape their handmaid in the name of feminism or fetishism. These are some quotes from the book that describes Serena Joy through the handmaid's eyes. Sometimes I can hear her pacing back and forth, a heavy step and then a light one, and the soft tap of her cane on the dusty rose carpet. Another one. Perhaps she's sewing in the sitting room with her left foot on the footstool because of her arthritis. Another one. Her nose must once had been what was called cute, but now was too small for her face. Her face was not fat, but it was large. 2 lines led downwards from the corners of her mouth. Between there was her chin.
Yeah, it's interesting how different that is than what we saw on the show.
Yeah.
Very different.
Also, several showrunners and writers and directors, and Moss herself has said that the real love story of the show is the story between the handmaid and her lovely rapist. And this is what Atwood has to say about the relationship in the book. And again, it's a quote directly from the book, from the handmaid's perspective, obviously. I wanted to think that I would have liked her in another time and place, another life, but I could see already that I wouldn't have liked her, nor she me.
Yeah, so that's in the book Offred, talking about Serena.
Yeah, that's all Fred, yeah. Everything is from her perspective in the actual book.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an example of Serena and her hypocrisy. Serena Joy was never her real name, not even then. Her real name was Pam. I read that in a profile on her in a news magazine long after I first watched her singing while my mother slept on a Sunday morning. By the time she was worthy of a profile, Time or Newsweek it must have been. She wasn't singing anymore by then. She was making speeches. She was good at it. The speeches were about the sanctity of the home, about how women should stay at home. Serena Joy didn't do this herself. She made speeches instead. But she presented this failure of hers as a sacrifice she was making for the good of all. It's similar to what she was writing in her notebook in season 6 as well. She mentioned something about her own sacrifices, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, the whole system that she helped build has always been about everybody else and not her.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's always held herself to a different standard and always assumed that she'd be the one who didn't have to follow her own guidelines.
Yeah.
So we'll probably talk a little more about Serena later when we talk about Nick, because their relationship is important here as well. But I know you had mentioned Aunt Lydia and Lawrence as 2 others here that we should bring up.
Yeah, as the 2 other redemption receiving characters we got this season. So yeah, maybe we just move on to Aunt Lydia for a while.
Yeah.
And also remind ourselves of her bad deeds, which are a lot too, especially, well, towards handmaids, like plucking Ginny's eye out, or shackling that one pregnant handmaid and then later also June to a bed so she wouldn't hurt herself, or as a punishment, or also ordering other aunts around to, well, burn hands over open fires. What else? Oh yeah, whipping feet until they're bloody.
Mental.
I mean, yeah,
a lot of mental torture. Yeah, that's just the physical list. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just the physical bloody details. I mean, the mental torture she exacts in, like, shaming Janine over getting raped by a group of guys when Gilead was not yet in motion, or then also guilting June into thinking that she's responsible for Omar's death, which is actually a little bit true.
Yeah, but her way of doing it was obviously brutal and
yeah,
basically forcing June to have a split personality.
I mean, yeah, she made it look like that she actually, like, as if June hanged him herself, whereas it was actually Gilead who did this as a punishment for helping her.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
The faked hanging of the handmaids in season 2, episode 1.
Yeah.
But these are the ones that came to my mind. I mean, there are surely way more.
And shaming of Matthew was part of the scope of what finally broke her, I think. That came from June. Really.
The torture in season 4 when they captured June.
Oh, yeah.
And Lydia's out embroidering in the hallway while it's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you have all those instances, and it is not until season 5, I'd say, that kind of turns around a little bit, especially when it comes to Esther and her rape by Putnam, and the fact that Esther then poisons Janine and herself over this, and Janine nearly dies, and Esther also nearly dies, and we've got this, like, chilling emotional Lydia scene at her bed, which was like one of Andout's best performances, I'd say. And she's begging for forgiveness and stuff at this point already. But I didn't see a lot of this season, actually, season 6. I think like she got meek in a way, which I could not really understand why, because I felt like we had a lot of powerful scenes with her in season 4, and then also again in season 5, like the Last Supper thing with the aunts, where she was already trying to do a little bit better, where she was trying to get Janine as an advocate for handmaids and like a little bit of a bridge between the aunts and the handmaids, but it didn't go anywhere. And then in season 5, she also, like, as I just said, she had the breakdown. And she has several breakdowns this season over Janine being a Jezebel girl now and seeing all the other girls being Jezebels, as if she did not know that the system existed at all, which is also strange because she's an aunt. She has she has knowledge, she has intel, she has blackmail content about commanders and stuff, because she was trying to blackmail Lawrence in season 4, it was, right? Yeah, when she comes up to him and says, like, I know about you guys. And she helps Lawrence get rid of certain people around that. So I was wondering where this all went, like this Lydia, this a little bit powerful, this little bit player Lydia that will venture into the Testaments Lydia. But like this season, it kind of got lost in between, I think, which felt odd to me, that she kind of, sometimes it felt like that her development even got a little bit backwards.
Yeah.
Especially in episode 8, when she was trying to punish Aunt Phoebe / Eva and also did not remember Moira, and was trying to punish the handmaids again, shoot them and whatever. And only the fact that Janine and June talked her out of it was the reason why she actually doubled down on this plan again.
I can kind of understand a little bit of that back and forth with her character, because unlike Serena and Lawrence, who had mostly full knowledge of what they were getting themselves into when they made these choices and had privilege to make those choices, Lydia was brainwashed fairly significantly by the system. I mean, I think we do see in her flashback that she has this cruelty in her flashback episode because of the way she treats Noelle and her son. So it was something that they could manipulate from her. But I do think there has been, which maybe will be dealt with more in the Testaments, but a lot of conditioning of her into the system.
I also think it's because the Testaments was written. Obviously, the flashback that we had for Aunt Lydia, I think, came out before the Testaments was written. And then when you read the Testaments, is a completely different
That's true.
ball game. Like the way that she's made an aunt, it makes you sympathize with her after reading the Testaments, because she was brutalized by the system. So you kind of understand why I still don't understand why she had to be so brutal, but there are times where you really do believe that she was trying to protect these girls, because these girls had a job to do. That's the only thing that was going to save them. It's wrong. I'm not justifying it. It's obviously very, very wrong. And it's once again based on faith. And she was a woman of faith as well. So she's using that faith in order to protect the girls. And I think that when she sees Jezebels, even though I do agree with Yulia, like there's no way that she didn't know that these things were happening. But I think that when she sees it is when she realizes that these men are wicked. That's why she says it in the hanging, these wicked men.
Yeah.
And in the Testaments, that is a very heavy topic about how the men went completely like commanders, like worst commanders ever, like younger girls, like it just turned a really bad turn from what we saw in this Gilead. So I think a lot has to do with the Testaments, and I think that's why it blurs a little bit with what we've seen in the show and the people that haven't seen the Testaments, and is she redeemable, is she not?
Yeah, and I think Ann Dowd made some good points in our interview with her too about how she sees the character, because I think she stated that, Lydia, you have to believe this stuff, really, really believe it, to do what she's doing. And that plus an element of denial is like the perfect storm for her to have become who she was. And like you said, her eyes have been opened by seeing it. And when she would hear them say it, I think Ann Dowd said this as well, that she would just think, oh, they're just, it's just talk. They're not, they're just wicked and they're just stirring up trouble. But when she actually sees it with her own eyes, she becomes
Aware.
the blinders completely come off and she can't ignore it anymore.
Since we're talking about redemption, I think it's when we see the show, we see these characters, we see not everything, but we see why they get to where they are, the decisions, the situations. It's not the same as if someone told you, well, Serena wrote a book and, they used that book to create Gilead and her husband hit her and she ended up being a wife. But if you don't see the details, if you don't see like how cruel she was, or you're going to think like, oh, well, she was just a victim of the system because she's a woman. Same with Lawrence. If they just tell you that Lawrence, I know we're going to talk about him later, it was just a commander, you're just going to think, oh, commanders are bad, because that's the message. But we see, his speeches throughout the seasons, how he's acting, how he behaves himself with other women, like you see like from a window. So you follow this character and you kind of see a bigger picture. And that's why to some people, some characters are redeemable and others are not. I don't know if that made sense. I was just thinking about that.
No, it makes complete sense. I mean, but the essence is that we need to see those things,
Mm-hmm.
We need to experience them. If we don't see them, we cannot build our opinions on this.
We're seeing them because that's what they showed us.
Yeah.
With these characters, Serena, Lawrence, Nick, Fred, June, etc., etc., etc.
Exactly.
Yeah. Through their dialogue, through the way they interacted with others. Yeah. So should we talk a little bit about Lawrence?
Let's talk a bit about Lawrence. I think like Scarlett just already said like some key points. Well, we know he's a commander and he is also in it from the beginning. He's a renowned writer and economist, which sadly makes him also responsible for Gilead's economy, which also includes, and this is a fact that a lot of people already forgot, which also includes the establishment of the colonies system. And we got a glimpse at the colonies in season 2 a little with Emily. And I think like if we would have been shown more than what we have would have been shown, it would have been even worse. But besides death, it's the worst fate you can get in Gilead, to be sent to the colonies, which are poisoned by radioactive waste and stuff, because we see those women, well, lose their teeth and develop conditions pretty fast due to the waste they are made to shovel.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we've seen the colony since season 2, which is
we didn't know
something that is probably a little bit forgotten as well. You're right. And I don't know that they mention it much after season 2 either.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got like what is one other kind of cruel scene where June is made to
choose the women that are gonna be saved
from the colonies. Yeah.
They've been gathered from somewhere and they're going to go to the colonies, right? And then she's able to choose 5 that or Lawrence forces her to choose the 5 that are going to survive, rather that are going to be brought into Gilead, rather than going to the colonies and made into Martha's. So yeah, I wonder where they came from. Did they ever say that, where those women were brought in from? It was probably maybe it was Chicago or just another city that was under attack. Probably the neighborhoods were being captured or pulled into Gilead.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easily to become an unwoman or someone deemed not worthy to become a member of Gilead society, which is basically being homosexual or not married or being in a second marriage like June and Luke. And the only thing or the only reason that June did not end up in the colonies is that because she had a child, because she was fertile.
Right.
So she was made a handmaid. If not, she would have ended up in the colonies as well.
And probably a lot of women that fought back in any way were just immediately sent to the colonies rather than trying to.
Yeah.
So these is some examples about how women in Gilead would see the handmaids. And specifically, this is a scene between the 2 Marthas that the Waterfords had, which is Rita and then also Cora, who's in the show, but she's not the Martha of the Waterfords. She's actually Lawrence's Martha in season 2 or 3.
I think it starts in 2, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what it says in the book is, and again, this is all from Offred, the handmaid. Once though, I had Rita said to Cora that she wouldn't debase herself like that. Nobody asking you, Cora said. Anyways, what could you do, supposing? Go to the colonies, Rita said. They have the choice. With women and starved to death, and Lord knows what all, said Cora. Catch ya. So this is an example of how people talk about how Nick had the choice to leave and not be a guardian and not be an eye. It's like, people just assume that these people could just walk out the door and say like, well, I don't want this job.
Right.
I want to go back to what I was doing before Gilead started. That's not how it works.
Yep, it's not a choice for a lot of people.
You do your job or you get killed.
If you're not a commander at the beginning or rich at the beginning and part of the formation of all of this,
And probably not even then.
maybe not, yeah.
Because some of the wives probably don't even want to be doing what they're doing. Like
That's true. That's a good point.
Lawrence's wife, for example,
Of course, yeah, that's a very good point.
they still can't just leave.
But yeah, if your choice is be a handmaid or go to the colonies, and then you're judged for choosing to live.
Well, there's literally a bit about the handmaid saying that she chose it.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Do this or die.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's a choice.
Well, yeah, it is choice.
It's a choice, but it's like
People think that's a choice, right? Yeah, exactly. It's like Nick choosing to betray. Well, he didn't choose it. It was literally, you could give something away and he didn't even know what was going to happen to the women. But
No.
yeah, it's either you do that or you get killed.
You do what the person says, you comply or die, as Megan says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is what we're saying about her saying that she had a choice. So this is the first time she's having the ceremony, or at least the first time we see in the book. What he's fucking is the lower part of my body. I do not say making love because this is not what he's doing. Copulating two would be inaccurate because he would imply two people and only one is involved. No, that's rape, cover it. Nothing is going on that I haven't signed up for. There wasn't a lot of choice, but there was some, and this is what I chose.
It's horrifying.
Yep. And it's Serena Joy that's holding her down.
Yep.
I think that scene with Lawrence, I think it was more of a lesson. I mean, I remember the first time I saw it, I thought it was extremely cruel, but then it kind of hit me what Lawrence was trying to do. It's like, this is something like you can't save everybody. You have to choose who you're going to save. You have to be smart about it. And that's why she chooses the woman that she chooses with the files, because they're going to help with the rebellion. And I always thought that Lawrence did that on purpose, like
For sure.
pushing her for her to understand, like, these are the shitty decisions that you have to make when you're in Gilead. Obviously, June didn't choose to be in Gilead and Lawrence made Gilead. But I've always thought that because Lawrence was not a religious man, he wasn't buying this whole, like he says it in season 5, like he had to let the religious crazy people take over because if not, it wasn't going to happen. And he didn't think it was going to turn the way that it turned.
Yeah, those were the people like that. I mean, like in our current situation in America and a lot of other countries where the real extremists are the ones that take these giant leaps of action and tear things down. And so he was using that to produce what he wanted. And then, of course, without somehow thinking of the consequences of how using an organization like that is going to have significant fallout and not be containable after that. So, yeah, I think June and Lawrence's relationship in season 3 is extremely interesting. I really enjoy watching them together.
Yeah, especially when they're forced, the bear witness, and she says it to him, like, how long do you think it was going to be until it came for you? And you clearly see, like, I know we're probably going to talk about this, but both Lawrence and Nick were the only 2 commanders that have been portrayed entirely different from the rest of the commanders for 5.5 seasons. And I think there's a reason for that. Like Yulia said at the beginning, like, we have seen Serena being cruel. We have seen it. It's very different when you see it and when you don't see it. And we've also seen Lydia be very cruel. And I think that this might sound weird, but because they are women, it affects, at least for me, it affects me more to see a woman being cruel to other women.
Yes.
Versus men being, because we kind of expect, I know this is kind of a shitty mentality, but unfortunately, we expect men to be shitty. They're not all shitty, but we expect men to be shitty. That's what we have been programmed with. And we're supposed to side with women because we're at a disadvantage. But women can be just as shitty. And I think Serena and Aunt Lydia are an example for that.
Yeah, I think like the Moira quote fit very well when Moira said to Serena that she's the real gender traitor.
Definitely.
That was one of the best lines. I love this line.
Yeah.
So yeah, we laid out this kind of past actions of those 3 characters. What I thought about redemption arcs in general, and a really believable and fulfilling redemption arc, at least for me, is I really need to see that the people kind of changed because they wanted to. Like, they had a real change of heart. They have the desire to change, and their action reflect these desire.
Yeah, and I think it's also important just to state here too that somebody having a change of heart doesn't mean that they're no longer responsible for their previous actions. And I think that is not being addressed the way it should have been within the show.
Yes. And this is my biggest gripe I have with these three people getting kind of an easy way out by the conclusion of the story. Like, they all, quote unquote, helped the resistance, helped Mayday in their ways. But Serena, she only gave away the plan of the commanders to go to DC after June talked to her, like in this church scene. And there's also the fact that she married Wharton and she fled the house the very same night because he did not turn out who she thought he would be. So is this like a real sacrifice? Is this, hey, I'm giving away the plan to you immediately, June, because I want to help with your plan? No, it's not. She did because June gave a speech, and she maybe also thought like, okay, I'll get rid of my commander husband, who's just like the rest of them. She did say.
Yeah, her husband that she hated anyway. Yeah.
It's the biggest sacrifice of the season.
Huge sacrifice. Give her all the awards for that.
So this is not like a change of heart for me at all, for Serena. The same goes for Lawrence in a way, even though, of course, he boarded that plane on his own terms in the last minute, sacrificing his life for the plan to kill all those commanders. But the reason why he even joined the Mayday plan was to save his own ass, because those commanders were not on board with New Bethlehem. They wanted to get rid of New Bethlehem, and they wanted to get him on the wall. So he went to Mayday in June and said, okay, well, I help you with your Mayday plan and get all those men killed so it would save my own life. This is the reason why he helped them, not because he wanted to get rid of them in the first place, like before. No, he was very much still into his New Bethlehem plan and to change the country in a certain way, of course, to make it a little bit better, but to redeem himself, or like because he felt guilty for creating it. And I can see that. So I would say he's still a little bit better than the others, because I could feel that he was feeling remorseful.
Yeah.
And wanting to do better for Eleanor.
Yeah, you've seen him struggle with that. I mean, there's a back and forth, but you've seen him think this way for years. It's not something that was just tacked on to the end of the show.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was shown. It was progressively shown, and that's why I think his ending landed, because it was progressively shown that he regretted it. Even though in season 5, I remember when it came out, we were talking like, what's his deal? Like, because he looked a little bit too power hungry, but eventually you understood that what he was pushing for was for New Bethlehem. That was his baby in order to redeem himself. But my thing is, if he would have survived the plane, for some reason, the plan would have worked the way that it was supposed to. He was not going to keep siding with the Americans or Mayday.
No.
He was going to push for New Bethlehem, and he was only going to side with the Americans and Mayday if he needed help again. There was no way in hell, because he did not want America.
No. Also, like, he really, again, it was June who needed to talk him into doing this. Even like he after the bombing of Boston, he was gone. Like, Twello complains that they don't know where he is, and then he gets like dragged into this Boston Globe office, and he was like, oh, why are you waiting for me at home? It's like, dude, are you with the resistance now or not? And he's talked into helping their bombing plan of the commanders. You know, it's not like he wanted to do that.
It's also completely insane that the Mayday rebels, let Lawrence just walk around and hear all of their plans. Like,
I mean, all commanders are bad.
They were just like, oh yeah, I mean, this one is fine. We're going to just tell him everything, even though we don't really trust him. Pretty crazy thing to do.
Yeah. So we were just talking about Lawrence, so maybe we can stay within the Lawrence household and talk a little bit about Naomi and her turn within the last 2 episodes maybe, which I mean, we obviously love Ava Carradine. He's like a lovely person. But again, this kind of small redemption for Naomi also felt a little shoehorned into me, especially because it's very heavily related to Janine.
Yeah, and we actually talked about this a little bit in episode 10 because I can kind of buy it a little bit, but I feel like we should have been shown more of what was going on there. And in episode 10, we pretty much just followed June wandering around, and we didn't get to see, I don't know, Naomi's reaction to Lawrence dying and how she was handling that and how she was handling caring for Charlotte after his death and what he said to her right before he left for DC about making sure that the child was learning and taken care of. And I could see her ruminating on that and thinking about that because of Lawrence's influence. But because we didn't see any of that and suddenly she disappears in the woods with the child to give to Janine, it feels very abrupt.
Yeah. Like, but also if you think about the first episodes of the season, episode 3, where Lydia comes to Lawrence and Naomi and begs them to take Janine back from Jezebel's, because Naomi was responsible for Janine to go to Jezebel's in season 5, because Janine did not want to be friends with Naomi. She called her a bitch, I think.
Naomi had a very petty response that ended up getting Janine into a very, very bad situation.
Yes. And when Aunt Lydia begs them in episode 3 of season 6, after the diplomats visited and Lawrence is in high spirits and wants to have Sundays or something like that.
Yeah, Sundays, please.
Naomi's response is that she will never take that girl, meaning Janine, back because she's vile. And I don't remember all the words she's naming her, but
I think Naomi calls her a bitch in that scene too. I think that it's slinging both ways.
So, see, she hates her for what she said to her, you know? And then we get the scene with Serena, where Serena presents the new Bethlehem plan she has. And Naomi is also like not buying it and not wanting this, despite knowing that Lawrence is the founder of New Bethlehem. Like, it's her husband.
Right.
Like, why should she oppose this plan?
I think that was literally in episode 8 too, which is right before this turn.
Yeah. So then we get, of course, this talk between Lawrence and Naomi, where he knows that he will probably not come out alive of whatever is happening with the rebellion, and he sends Charlotte/Angela and Naomi away and tells her that she should read her the book and stuff like this. But this is like one talk we see, one talk in 6 seasons, and Naomi is around from season 1. And when Charlotte was a baby, she hated the crying. She, even at the start of this season, she was like, girl, come on, you have your art class. And like, you know, it's like there was not a real motherly love towards this girl, I feel like.
Yeah.
Maybe you see it differently.
No, I think that's right. But I also kind of wonder if that could play into her decision to give the child to Janine.
Exactly. But it's presented as like a selfless act.
Yeah.
In episode 10. It's something, it's presented as she's doing it for Janine. But what you actually need to think about is Naomi also gets back into Gilead. June asks her, what about her now? And like, oh yeah, I'll just go back to the system.
Remarry or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the kid's gone now.
Which I'm not sure how she would possibly explain that to anyone either. Like, suddenly my child is gone and here I am back, and I don't know what she would say, that they stole the child. I guess Boston was falling. But,
maybe, yeah. It's like I was going on a stroll through the woods with her, and she was just ripped from my arms.
Janine just jumped out of behind a tree and grabbed her.
Aunt Lydia, who should have been on the wall anyway.
Right.
So yeah, obviously, this is a beautiful thing to see, and that she came around and gave Janine her child back and stuff like this. But just thinking about the decision making kind of takes away from this, and also the other message that there is no real consequence for Naomi. She did the right thing because she was another woman within the system. It's like it did not feel like a natural development of a character, that she always wanted this to happen, or it was just like to round up, to make all the women do the right thing in the end.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's all a matter of convenience. I think what we want to see is people choosing the greater good, because it gives us hope that shit is not going to turn to shit in the real world. So that's what you want to see in TV, the good guys winning. But in reality, I don't think it works that way, because if it worked that way, these things wouldn't keep happening throughout the world. I think it's a lot more complex than, oh, there was a reason why he chose to do what he did. There was a reason why Serena chose to do what she did. It was for June. She did it for June. She didn't do it for Mayday. She did it for June. In the end, she ends alone, a single mom, loving her son, with the possibility of Tuello looking for her and saving her, and maybe we'll have a spin-off of Serena and Tuello.
Nice little rom-com with the two of them.
Yeah.
That she doesn't deserve.
Exactly.
Well, it's not about what you deserve in this show anymore, I guess. It's like, yeah.
Which is also, I mean, that's realistic in some ways.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But that's a fair thing to comment on. I just don't know that they were commenting on that specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also, I think we touched on this a little earlier, but I feel like it's the same pattern for Aunt Lydia as well. I mean, she feels, you can see the guilt and how she's breaking down and pleading to God and to, better things. But it's like, compared to the season 4 or 5 breakdowns, like this season I didn't really see any significant change in her, except for when it comes to Janine, or like, of course she goes to Serena and wants a change for the handmaids, but only after she learned that they are not going to the promised land, quote unquote, in the end, but are like made Jezebels or sent to the colonies or whatever. And you have this duality between wanting this for the handmaids, but as soon as the handmaids fall into this pattern of uprising and resistance, she resorts back to her, like, you cannot behave like that, I'll get you shot and whatever this is. And only after, again, June and Janine, her favorite girls, talk to her and vouch for her good side and her conscience and her remorse over everything that happened, then she comes around and sides with them,
Yeah.
And this is again a problem I have with a little bit of her redemption as well. So one thing I also don't understand and don't get with her last scene in episode 10, when she brings Janine and Eyes or Guardians are with her, delivering her, how can she be an aunt, like still be an aunt? Like, she shouted those wicked men, blah, blah, at the gallows, and Wharton was right next to her. And he was still very much alive because he was not killed at this bombing, as were other commanders. So how can she still be an aunt and not on the wall immediately after that happened? And got to be an aunt again.
Yeah.
Like, it's like she would have been dead just for that statement. It was nice to see, but like, if you think about it, it's just,
yeah.
And on the notion of talking about Janine this season, who is one of our favorite characters from the start, maybe also, but also like especially this season. I mean, Madeleine Brewer did an exceptionally well job at portraying her again, and also again, like two different sides, I would say. I mean, the Jezebel Janine was like more open, more like, again, like a bit of a spitfire, like we saw in season 1, maybe, before her eye got plucked up by Aunt Lydia. But
or conditioning. Yeah. She did a great job of converging those two parts of her personality here in the last season. I felt like that was one of the things that was very organic, and I bought it. Like, I bought that would be where she was mentally at this stage in her arc, in her character's journey. So yeah, congratulations to Madeleine. It was great.
Yes, it also made a lot of sense that she was this hopeless Jezebel girl until Lawrence brought her that drawing from her daughter.
Yeah.
And there was a shift in that, and you could really see that in the performance and everything.
For sure.
Which was great. So maybe she's also like 3 personalities, because when she became the handmaid again after episode 6, or like, well, we see it in episode 7. She became somewhat of like, this meek character again that she was in between, I guess. And I think we said it.
Yeah.
It felt like she put on the red dress and her whole personality changed again.
Yeah, she accessed that traumatized part of herself.
Yeah,
which I can understand because she hasn't been out of Gilead in the whole show so far. Whereas June, obviously, has been back and forth, but Janine has been here this whole time and had countless horrific things happen to her over the course of these seasons. So yeah.
So what I was asking myself, so in episode 6 this season, Aunt Lydia visits her again and tells her that she really wants to help her and that she loves her and she's her girl and stuff like this again. And Janine tells Aunt Lydia that she does not expect real help from her. She would never be able to forgive her until she gets her daughter back, which is happening in the last episode. Totally fine. It's like coming to full circle. But what happens in between in episode 8 is when Aunt Lydia is confronted with all the handmaids enacting their plan to murder commanders and wives and stuff. Janine goes up to Aunt Lydia and hugs her for making like one right decision. And it felt like a forgiving moment to me. And I could not understand that. I mean, I could understand that she was helping June to manipulate Aunt Lydia into doing the right thing, into helping June to get Aunt Lydia to not report them, to let them go, what happened. But I could not understand that hug.
Yeah, I can definitely see from that perspective. I think Janine and Aunt Lydia maybe have a June and Serena type of bond, only on a slightly different playing field, because Serena, I feel, was more intentionally malicious and power hungry, where Aunt Lydia was a little more brainwashed and victim of her own beliefs. So I think there's maybe a parallel there. And I can kind of see Janine's personality from earlier in the show as maybe the one that's there hugging Aunt Lydia, because she's back in the handmaid's position, like you were saying before. So it's almost like the part of Janine that felt like a motherly connection with this woman who also brutalized her was part of the personality of Janine the handmaid, not necessarily Janine the whole person. So I can maybe go with that to a certain extent. But I do agree with you that it was abrupt.
Yeah, especially also because Janine was completely down for joining the handmaid operation, like immediately. Like she snapped out of this as soon as June murdered Commander Bell. You know?
Yeah.
Like I could understand that when she was like at the window and winking to Aunt Lydia when she visited. But as I said, not really at that point, like except for like, an act of manipulation, but definitely not an honest hug of forgiveness, which it felt like, at least for me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I wonder a little bit if the fact that the show is aware of where this is going and the fact that Janine is going to get Charlotte and Aunt Lydia is going to honor that stipulation of forgiveness in the following episode may have bled backwards into episode 9 and informed the way that scene was played out, if that makes sense. Because you're right, Janine had said very clearly, I won't forgive you unless you bring me my daughter. But we know, because of episode 10, that she will do that in some capacity. She'll be involved in that in some way. So, yeah, I just wonder if that played into it. And we're viewing it from the perspective of that hasn't happened yet, and they're viewing it from the perspective of it will happen. It's an inconsistency in the character, yes. But I think her being a handmaid, her having been put back into the handmaid position at that point makes it possible for me to follow it a little more. I do wish we'd had more time to understand what happened between that moment and the moment in the woods. See what Janine's doing, see what Aunt Lydia is doing. We don't see any of that. So there are a lot of dots that have to be connected with no information supplied by the show.
Yeah, I think like the only thing we knew about Janine's fate up until, well, that last moment is that she was taken by the eyes, right?
Right.
I think this is what June says. So like Aunt Lydia has connections to the eyes and they help her bring Janine to June / Mayday / I don't know. Yeah, as you said, we don't know from where they were coming from. And if you just watch it casually, it's fine. But even the fact that Aunt Lydia was able to do that was a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, that she escaped everything that had happened with no punishment, really, or no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument I can make for that at all is that Wharton died and the Boston Commanders died in the next episode. So I guess I could say, well, maybe they hadn't reported what happened with Aunt Lydia, and the only people that were left alive that were witnesses were the Guardians and the Econo people. But like, it was a pretty public spectacle that she made of what she did, and you would think somebody would come down on that and say, yeah, you don't want to really make her an aunt again. She betrayed Gilead and
exactly
supported a handmaid revolution. Like, we don't want that to be a power player in our next.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that, apparently people can drive in and out of Gilead, no problem whatsoever in comparison to other seasons. People have this idea that, Nick could have left whenever he wanted to. I mean, he could have, used his helicopter that he won as a commander perk and gotten Hannah from Colorado. They're just little details, obviously, that, I know that a lot of people just tune in to watch the show for entertainment. I mean, I know this is a heavy topic, but usually that's why you watch TV. But then there's other people that see a lot more in what the show is giving you, especially the show has given us those things as well.
Well, and it's like our Prose Without Thorns friend said, that it breaks the contract with the writers and the readers, or with the writers and the viewers, that you're not sticking to the previously established rules of your world or your storytelling.
Yeah.
I can suspend disbelief for a lot of things, but not for things that don't track with what we've already been told for many, many seasons about a character or about the way the world works.
Exactly.
So I think that's where things are really breaking down here in the final few episodes of the show.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
For sure. But yeah, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the sudden turn on Nick and maybe the way villainizing him in these final moments compares to the redemption arcs of the characters we've just discussed?
I think that what bothered me was, obviously we went into this season expecting, obviously not this. And then at least I try to see things from a different perspective. And trying to understand what I was given and what I was shown in this last season. And for me, that line, the winning line, was just like, for me, it was made to put that nail in the coffin in his villainization.
Nick on the plane, the winning, you chose the winners.
You chose the winning side. And there's a lot of people speculating on social media. I'm not going to get into that. But for me, it was just like, oh, I chose Gilead for whatever reason, whether Rose told him, whether he lost June, whether it was just still completely out of character. You had, since season 3, when you made him a commander, to show what you said. There were a lot of things he did that we didn't show you. It doesn't work that way, because what you showed me was always a conflict. What you showed me, there was always a dislike. There was always I'm uncomfortable. Even if he did the things he did for June, there were still things that would have put him in the wall. There were still dangerous things. Obviously, in the books, Nick was Mayday. And I know the show deviated obviously from the book, but if they were going to deviate so much, they could have just given Hannah at the end of the fucking episode, which is what most people wanted, and just change the testaments. If you were going to deviate completely. So for me, I was always expecting Nick to eventually be Mayday, even if you made him a commander in season 3.
Right.
But when you made him a commander in season 3, if this is a route that you were going to take, you should have planted that seed then. You can't plant that seed after episode 7. Not even after episode 7, because even if I analyze what you gave me in season 6, Nick is still Nick until he says that line.
Yep.
It's all about the line. And it's like, oh, that's who he always was. He was always selfish. How can you tell me that he was selfish if every time that we saw him, he was doing something for June? I understand that people wanted him to join the good guys, but didn't we just talk about, did Lawrence really join the good guys? Did Serena really join the good guys? Like, that's not how it works in real life.
And everything that we do see Nick doing, even the things that aren't for June, there are a lot of quiet examples of him doing good with his situation, doing good in his position. Like, from where he's standing, from where he's trapped, he's still trying to do these small acts of goodness, kindness, of making a small difference for people. And yes, it's great that there are these big heroic swings that are apparently working out in a few days to bring Boston down. That's great. another thing that feels incredibly unrealistic that we'll get into.
Bringing Boston down is like also a really nice example of how they are bombing the city, right? They are bombing Boston. The Americans are bombing Boston, right?
Yeah.
I did get this right. I did see the scene, right?
You did.
Nobody explained it to me in an interview. I did see it happening.
Yeah.
Which means there are people, econo people, who are just victims of systems. They are not commanders. They are not wives or guardians. They are like normal, unfortunate people still living there. It's like the bombing of, German cities is like kind of the same. It's just civilians, even though they were like the current war in Ukraine and Russia. You can compare it to every war. These are civilians. They are not actual believers just because they have to live there under this system. And they happily threw bombs on them, and you will still try to tell me that this is not the same as every other war action in every other city, and that this makes it okay for the Americans to take over the city like in that way.
Well, and especially because they do show a contrast with Nick through the season of, him not wanting innocent people to die. They said that multiple times throughout this season, and I think in previous seasons.
Yeah.
And it shows a real good example of a real person, a human being, not a hero, not a superhero, but a real person trying to do these things that he can do from his position to help. And it's just, that's what we've seen. We haven't seen him doing horrendous things with his own agency.
Intentions of power, like looking for power.
Right. He hasn't made the choice to do these things in a malicious way. And like there was a quote from Yalin Chang recently where she said, he has done some bad things and we haven't shown them, so it was convenient to forget. So we're forgetting what they never showed us. How does that make any sense?
Of course, obviously, I always forget things that never happened. It's just normal, right? That you don't remember anything that never happened. Makes sense.
I think we could have fill in the blanks, which is what they're trying to tell us. Like the same way that you're telling me that he was doing bad things, he could have been doing good things.
Exactly.
Except that you decided in episode 9 to make sure that he chose Gilead. And it's like, you could have shown him to me making plans, going to Jezebel's. You could have given me something, don't tell me it was the Swiss. Don't tell me it was what Serena said, because all of the things that you've given me in past seasons have a history, have a reason, we've seen it. There's an interpretation for it, not a justification, because no one's saying that he's innocent. Just like Lawrence, just like Serena, just like Aunt Lydia, he has blood on his hands. Yes. But to expect me to equate him or see him as any other commander just because he made one mistake, as the interviews I've read in interviews, like, oh, he made one mistake, he's human, and not give him the grace that you gave every other character is just insane to me. Like, I understand the shock value. I understand they can't please, every fan base, but you could have landed it in a better way.
Exactly.
Like, if you wanted to make him bad, make him bad. If you wanted to kill him, it still would have hurt, because obviously we're here because he's one of our favorite characters. But give him a real death that goes to his character and what you showed us for 5.5 seasons. And that's not what they did, at least not in my eyes. And I know that a lot of us agree.
Yeah, exactly. And then also in that regard, it's not just you joined the winners line, but then also topping this with episode 10's line of June, where she said to Serena that he reaped what he sowed, which is what Nick told Fred when he delivered him to her in the last episode of season 4 to just, again, for the listeners, that he got rid of another cruel commander after Caffrey and after Putnam and after Cushing. He helped take down all those really cruel men, rapists and stuff, people who were responsible for the Handmaid system and things like this. So you as you said, you're putting this person who did nothing but help June survive, which she actually said in season 3 on her tape to her husband Luke, that he helped her survive, which is a truth, because he was never cruel to her or any other woman. He had the utmost respect for everyone, for Rita, for Serena, for Rose, for Beth, for the Mothers he talked to in season 4.
Mhm.
And he was a commander. He had more power than them at that situation, but they were like treating him like one of them.
Yeah.
This is a fact. We did see this. We have lines. He tried to get information on Hannah and stuff like this. He's proudly reuniting families in New Bethlehem because this is what he tells his father-in-law, Wharton, that he already got 26 families reunited.
Yeah.
And this is something he's proud of. This is like good things he
can do from where he's at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he knows that he's still trapped in Gilead, and he knows that he's done things and he's regretting them. But what he can do within the system he's trapped in now is things like reuniting families, at least.
To piggyback on that episode 10, there's not only that line, there's also he led a violent and dishonest life, which was also, those 2 lines for me ruined the whole experience, because it was like completely out of left field. Like, who are you talking? Like, did you forget that you ate Fred's face? Which I loved, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the ending of season 4. I have no complaints whatsoever. But we saw you literally eating Fred's face, and you're saying that Nick led a dishonest and violent life. And then on top of that, it's Serena, the one that tells her, if he had a choice, he would have chosen you. So the show is telling me that Nick never had a choice, even though people say he had choices. Apparently he didn't have choices. And then in episode 10, the same show that in an interview told me that all commanders were bad are telling me that Suello is not a captain, he's a commander, and that Emily ended with a good commander. So what is the message? I'm confused.
Like, also, like, on the good and bad commander notion, I mean, the painting of which already started in episode 2 in the season, like when Mom Holly called him Nazi, and this got explored again when Luke says the same after he gave away the plan of Mayday. So if you want to introduce these kind of, I don't know, words or whatever to describe a person, like, please apply them correctly to every single one who does fit this description, which is also Lawrence because he has power within the system. This is also Serena because she has some kind of power, which is Lydia, every guardian, every commander, every person who has some kind of power within Gilead is a Nazi too.
Every person that just stays in Gilead and doesn't fight against Gilead, that includes the Econo people that are trapped there, they could rise up and fight the system as well. I mean, I know it doesn't work that way, but if we're going to generalize and see it black and white, then I guess.
Yeah. But you cannot bring in these big words and then just apply it to one single soul who made mistakes, of course, who is obviously also part of the system. But
yeah, they're measuring Nick's morality on a different scale from every other character.
Exactly. It's not fair that he gets a different treatment also by June. So generally, I think what the audience feels and sees is obviously The Handmaid's Tale. So it is supposed to be from her perspective in many situations. Obviously, we have scenes where she's not included and we still got descriptions and stuff, but it's still mainly focusing on her story, obviously. And so that the fact that she was able to forgive these 3 characters we mentioned, like Lawrence, Serena, and Aunt Lydia in particular, that it makes sense for her character that she's okay redeeming them by her forgiveness in a way, but not granting the same to Nick, who actually helped her so many times for 5.5 seasons. Just recently, also in this season, episode 3, where he and she go on a rescue mission to No Man's Land and get her husband and her best friend out. And also that he gets the letters out from Jezebel. when Moira and her were trying to set the plan and Jezebel's in motion, and their map and the letters they received from Ginny got locked into the safe.
I think that's also a good place to point out that Nick never does any of this, any of the things that he does for her with any
personal gain,
but also with no assumption that he's going to get credit for it, or he doesn't even tell her about it. He does all of that without ever asking for or expecting credit for any of it. I mean, he literally cleans up June and Moira's crime scene, never mentions it to June. I've got a tooth in my pocket from your mess. Like, that's just a trail of his history of doing things for her and not doing them even with just a pat on the back. Like, I feel that Serena is constantly wanting a pat on the back for every little thing she does.
The one time he decides to be a little selfish, he gets fucked over by the whole season. What I was going to say to that point was June was always a character that tried to look for the good in everybody in Gilead. And I think that was said in an interview. And I think that's kind of part of her character arc. Like, she always expects people to do the right thing. And we see it throughout the seasons. And the fact that she didn't give Nick the one person that helped her that grace is, for me, like, mind-blowing. Because it's like, even if he killed puppies, drank virgin blood, collected body parts that we never saw and that we forgot because we never saw, he didn't do any of that to her. To her, he was her constant, even outside of Gilead, because he didn't look for her when she left. She looked for him because she needed help, because he told her in 409, and I'm here to do what I can. So she always, went to him because she knew she could trust him. And just to have it end like this, and she not, the show not given the opportunity to just resolve that, even if he ended up dying. Obviously, they were not going to end up together. We love Nick and June. It was a beautiful romance, but we were not expecting, a rom-com out of this. I know that's what people say a lot on social media. I don't like romance. That's not like the genre I look for. But the way that this was carved was beautifully done. When I saw episode 3 of season 1 and women losing their jobs, that's when I was like, holy shit. And that's what got me hooked. And I always liked Nick's character since the beginning. Even though I didn't know what was going on, I always liked his character. And I was drawn to him. And yes, I did enjoy the romantic aspects of it, even though it's not usually a genre that I follow or look when I'm like looking to watch a movie or read a book. It was carved very beautifully. And it's not just about the chemistry between the actors. It's just about the whole story. And to be reduced to somebody that just wanted Nick and June, Prince Charming in Paris, is really frustrating, because the show has a lot of themes, but the show also gave us a love story. The love story was part of June's life, and it was part of the book as well. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it's part of the discussion. And we can discuss that and discuss how religion fucks shit up, and discuss how politics fuck shit up, and how men are shitty, how women are shitty, cinematography, art, symbolism. We can talk about all that and talk about romance as well. It's not choose one and pick the other.
Beautifully said. I agree on every term. Because like for me, the show drew me in because of the, very heavy theme, actually, which is partly due because I'm German. So like the history with totalitarian systems and how they affect all people, and how it is to get thrown into the system, or like get drawn to them through propaganda and stuff like this, was always a topic that interested me so much. And this is also why I like Nick's character a lot, because as we discussed about his character, is that I always felt that he was just one more victim of the system. This is why he was a driver at the beginning. Like, he was like not top notch, and he was clearly also not following the teachings. He was not believing in them. He thought it was cruel what was happening, but like, he was all alone. And this is what those systems do. Like, they separate people from each other. We get this with the handmaids. Even though they're all handmaids, they mistrust each other.
Yeah, and there is a part in the book that discusses that the handmaids and Martha didn't even trust each other.
And it just reminded me of Nick saying that to Rita in episode 7 of this final season, when he tells her that she shouldn't trust anybody in Gilead, and that they would be scared of each other before, or that they were scared of each other before. And this is what is said again about Martha's. And this is again Offred thinking this. If I were to violate decorum to that extent, Rita would not allow it. She would be too afraid. The Marthas aren't supposed to fraternize with us.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples in the show of that between the handmaids, and no one trusts each other.
Yeah, even the handmaid, they're scared of each other.
Like, you must trust every single person. This is something that Nick says to Rita, which also made sense to me because it's true. It's like, I mean, it seemed cruel for him to say that to her, but actually I thought it was really relatable because he was right. They were like two people in this household who didn't know each other and didn't know if they were resistance, didn't know if they were true believers, didn't know if they were part of the eye, you know?
Right, trying to survive and under a system that propagates mistrust. I mean, it
exactly.
That's what it wants, is for people not to trust each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how they prevent you from coming together against them.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is the attention how Margaret Atwood wrote the book. I mean, there's a lovely explanation I don't have at hand at this moment, but she was writing the book when she lived in West Berlin, and she had like a little bit of a different outline when she started it, like at the beginning of the 80s, we're talking right now. So like when Germany was still divided, when the wall was still intact between, the Western world and the Eastern Soviet world. But she still visited the Eastern countries, like the GDR, where actually my parents grew up in. And they told me stories of their upbringing, of the mistrust they feared of the Stasi, and this is why Margaret Atwood also incorporated this into the book. And how the show presented this was really drawing me in. And then obviously, as I said, like Nick was kind of a representative of the everyday guy who just is facing this system every single time, and like not just him, of course, but like every other person as well, except for the higher ups. But it was really interesting how they navigated the world and the decisions they had to make, like especially when he became a commander and got only bad decisions presented in front of him, but he needed to choose one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's another thing that really connects us to Nick. At this point, I do think that June has become a little bit unrelatable in the sense that they are elevating her as a hero too much to be...
Yeah, relate to, because she's supposed to be any of us.
Yeah,
that's who June is supposed to be.
She was a blank page. She was just a random victim of the system. She was a mother, like some of us are. Or like in general, she was just a normal woman with a job.
Yeah.
And she got thrown into this system and needed to, again, as I said, navigate it. So yeah.
Well, and it's great to see people in that position fighting, because it makes you feel like you can make a difference. But when it becomes so centered on her godlike status within the show, it becomes really hard to continue putting yourself in her shoes, because that's not me. Like, maybe it could be, I don't know. But I just feel like it becomes so far outside of the realm of reality that most of us live in that it stops feeling inspiring to me to watch someone like that.
Yeah, what I liked in the seasons before was that exactly what you're talking about, that she became relatable. Like, even there were people that didn't like her decisions. There were people that did. You analyzed why she did this, why she did that. And she made many mistakes, obviously, because she's human. She's not a hero. She's supposed to make mistakes. And every decision you make is going to have a consequence. People are going to die in systems like these. So obviously, we're going to root for her because we want her to win, which is what I was talking about earlier. Like, we just want to see them winning. And for so many seasons, we saw her not winning. It was one after the other, one after the other. And it was harsh, it was bleak. So I did expect to see, yes, like this winning aspect, but I expected for it to be more realistic in terms of what the show had been given us, for so long. Like, I think I mentioned it in another recording. I loved season 4 because they touch on rage, on women rage. And that's not something that we get to see in media. Like, why can't we be as angry as we feel? That for me was like, yes, we're not allowed to be as angry as we feel. Like, that's not accepted in society. And to have it shown and to have the symbolism of what happened with Fred in the end, I know that a lot of people did not like season 4 because it ended that way. And I know that it took away from her humanity to get to that point, but I thought it was beautifully done.
Same.
Obviously, I'm not for vigilante justice. I understand, but she did try to get justice. I understood what Tuello said to her about you have to let a fish go to get bigger fish. It still sucks because she wasn't going to get any justice. That happens every single fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she was able to get her justice and that the show did not make her regret it. She does say that it does not bring you peace, but I did not see her regretting her decision.
No.
It was for me something that I do thank the show for giving at least me that.
And to show the allyship that Nick has with her in facilitating that for her.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not questioning, because
no.
Again, it might not even be worth saying anymore, but for me, one of the things that drew me to his character was the fact that he's not an overbearing man. And even though he masks his emotions, I do feel that even though in his backstory, he didn't have control of his emotions, Gilead made him have to like kind of hide that part.
Mm-hmm.
But I still saw someone that was in tune with his emotions, even though if he was pushing them aside. And we see this season those emotions when he's talking to June, how he's trapped, how he feels trapped, how he feels. And I thought that was something that was really nice to explore until we got to episode 9. Because even when he's telling her, we're human, that's what we do, we try to survive. I know that line was harsh, but it's a reality. That's what most people do. People don't sacrifice themselves for Mayday or for the greater good. That is not realistic. If it were, the world wouldn't be what it is. People try to survive.
Especially when people that you love are at risk because of it.
Obviously, like I don't plan on killing people, but if somebody puts a gun to my daughter's head and tells me that I have to kill somebody, someone's dying. I'm not going to let my daughter die. I mean, I know that's the dire example, but
no, that's very relatable.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, my intention is not to kill anybody ever, you know, but it's a lot more complicated than people maybe see at first hand.
Well, and most of us, thankfully, will never face that decision.
Hopefully.
But this show explores what it is like to actually face that, which is something that's difficult to face, but is a necessary part of this particular world that they've established.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as you started to say, Aubrey, the problem is that we cannot relate to the protagonist in certain points anymore. It feels a little like it digs too much into savior complex things, especially because we talked about redemptions. And if a redemption is tied to the protagonist's decision, or even worse, if the protagonist enables the redemption by talking the people into thinking about doing things differently, as we have discussed now, that June has a talk to every single person who gets a redemption.
Yeah.
And the person who does not get one, which is Nick, is the one person she does not grant this one by her forgiveness or a real talk.
Any kind of understanding. Yeah. And it sucks because I do feel like it actually used to be inspiring the way that she would push people to be better. That, I mean, in season 1, when she had the conversation with Nick, when they have the kind of, in quotes, breakup in the kitchen, and she's saying, is this enough for you? This bullshit life. Like, it's a very inspiring scene. And I think that that's like very powerful and valid there in that moment. But it just has become so overblown that I just don't relate anymore to her. And I think that they are leaning way too much on her having this huge impact on everyone and saving everything, and she's always the one in charge, and because of that things are actually happening, like as if all these other people don't have their own agency over their lives anymore. It's very frustrating and unrealistic, and doesn't make me have any, like, it doesn't motivate me anymore like it used to.
I wasn't like, there were 2 scenes that moved me this season, and it was when we saw Holly, her mom, because I really wanted that. Even, you know, I really, really wanted that.
Same. That was a beautiful scene.
And it really, it shouldn't piss me off because I know Yvonne's acting is just amazing. But that last scene when she's talking to June, I felt it, you know, like, but I didn't get moved like I would get moved in past seasons, like with season 1, season 2, there's so many scenes that just bring you, that not necessarily have to do with Nick, just with other characters. Great scenes, great dialogue. I know it's really hard closing out a show, but obviously we've been fans since the beginning, and it's kind of disappointing when it just doesn't land, not only because one of your favorite characters got fucked over, but because other things kind of didn't mesh well with what we had so far.
Yeah, for sure. And really, 2 of our favorite characters got fucked over because they ruined both Nick and June in the same swoop. Like, they found a way to break down his spirit, his character, and his physical life altogether, while simultaneously showing that June no longer cares about him, or maybe never did, and that she's become too selfish and out of touch to be relatable or likable anymore.
Which is also double as cruel, thinking about that. They had like over 2 years to like stick that landing.
To think about it.
Yeah. And they could have made us happy, because I think I told Melissa, or I told you, Aubrey, all they needed to do was, even if she says that god fucking stupid ass line when she's talking to Tuello, and Tuello's talking about his kid and wife in Hawaii, ex-wife, they needed to do was for fucking Tuello to tell her Nick left the borders open so that the American military could come in. That's all. That was, at least for me, that would have been like, you know what? I'll take it.
Yeah, right. And it's so annoying because Nick was only worried about Mayday plans because it was this
Luke fest of people.
No, it was untrained people. It was not military. They were not trained. They were just like random civilians going in and fight.
So were Tuello to have said, because clearly this had been planned somehow, even though the military is apparently not a thing anymore, which we'll talk about in the inconsistency section of this. But like the fact that Tuello had some kind of military power still at his beck and call, that he could order in at the execution to do what they did. If Nick had known that that was happening, I'm sorry, but the Nick that we've seen all this time would have embraced that.
Yeah.
So of course he would have helped them. If Tuel had called him and been like, hey, look, I actually do have military people now. They're coming in. Can you open the borders? He would have been like, yeah, I'm on the way. Like, what?
I know that.
Well, I think we have stated most of our points here on the redemption of certain characters and the villainization of Nick, which is, important to us. So I wanted to read some excerpts from an essay that our friend Emily wrote. And we just found it to be so brilliantly phrased. And I'll let it speak for itself. I feel so beside myself and gaslit by the whiplash of this experience that I needed to unload somewhere. And while it still feels futile to even try to explain all of my thoughts at this stage, I feel compelled to share where I've landed. I'm so unbelievably down over this, guys. Gutted, as I know all of you are. Nick Blaine wasn't just killed. He was sacrificed on the altar of the lesson, TM. An out of nowhere, contextually empty erasure of characterization, meaning, motivation, and continuity, all to teach the audience the lesson we never asked for or needed to hear. Nick wasn't given a resolution. He wasn't honored. He wasn't even mourned. Not by the showrunners, writers, cast members, or other characters, and most painfully, not by the woman who we know loved him so deeply. Instead, he was reduced to a message delivery device about Eva MAGA Nazi incels, or whatever buzzword is currently very popular on Twitter, in the most contrived and unearned narrative fashion possible. Once this utility was fulfilled for the whims of the show, these people just threw Nick in the trash where they claim he apparently always belonged. And the worst part is that the show expected us to applaud. It expects us to look at Joseph, pick 3 women, June, the rest die of radiation poisoning, Lawrence, and Serena Joy, but I never thought they'd take my finger or my child, Waterford, with enormous pride and empathy and understanding. Don't even get me started on Lydia. I have a PhD dissertation about that fascinating and deluded narcissist in my common history. To be clear, I love all these characters, flaws and all. They engross me, and it's intriguing watching their dynamics unfold in this often hideous, violent sandbox. But in the end, their arguably unnecessary redemptive arcs are heaped with praise and encouragement, and the writers bait us with how terribly complicated and brave they are, while substantially less problematic Nick isn't offered the same consideration or forgiveness or grace, and now perhaps never will be, according to that very same moral framework. June herself generally gets a pass as the protagonist, even though she has long been a flagrant thematic and ethical mirror for all of the considerable deficiencies we see in the antagonists. So who decides a character's worthiness for redemption or value then, and how? It is simply all so inconsistent. The framework gives everyone else the space to breathe, air, and exist. Whereas for Nick, the framework is solely punitive. Why? Why is this? Nick's actual unforgivable crimes: folding under Wharton's wall threats 3 episodes from the finale after years of repeatedly saving June and Nicole's lives and helping them escape, being a lifeline for finding out Hannah's whereabouts, gathering intel for the American intelligence agencies, smuggling contraband to the Jezebels and also to Luke over the border, delivering Fred on a platter so June and the other handmaids could rip them apart, executing other wicked commanders for their violence against vulnerable women, just a sample of his awful deeds. Keeping in mind that all of 13 and a half minutes ago in the show's timeline, he risked it all and was forced to murder 2 people in broad daylight during a highly scrutinized diplomatic event to save June's fucking idiot husband. We are all such brain-dead slop consumers that a recent magazine interview had Chang confirming Nick's many atrocities, none of which are ever shown on screen or even alluded to in the dialogue, but which she assures us definitely happened. A lot, trust me, bro. This little blurb is apparently sufficient evidence for the narrative to unceremoniously dispose of Nick, his legacy, and all he meant to us. Have you ever heard of a TV show whose narrative coherence literally requires supplemental reading materials? It's fine. Just eat the slop. Eat it and like it. This isn't tragedy. This is didacticism. This is when a writer's room decides that making a point is more important than telling a good story. When characters stop being human and start being metaphors. When you trade nuance for shock, ambiguity for ideology, and call it brave. Nick Blaine meant something to me. I saw myself in him. I saw my own passivity in him. I also saw my capacity for great bravery and connection in him. He was kind, vulnerable, morally gray, emotionally grounded, deeply tethered to June and thus to me, the viewer, experiencing her world. He was human. His gentleness, his love for June and Nicole was such a vital counterpoint to the monstrous cruelty of Gilead. But rather than explore that complexity and offer him the obvious arc his character had earned, the show retconned him literally at the finish line, flattened him, eliminated all of his human dimensions. And at the end, I actually laughed, horribly, in grotesque and amazed outrage. Like these writers were saying to me, hey, idiot, he was the real baddie all along. Believe us that he deserved this. We're the experts. And thought I would just gleefully swallow this up and lap it the fuck up. Narrative cohesion and character continuity was clearly not their focus. Why? Because message-driven media no longer trusts its audience to feel anything honestly. It has to teach us, to scold us. And if a character has to die in an embarrassingly ham-fisted way so that we can learn something about the cost of love, or the futility of hope, or the strength of a woman alone and any romance be damned, then so be it. Our fault. We watched it wrong. Silly females with our silly hopes and love stories and delusions. This is not storytelling. This is narrative punishment and poorly disguised moral performance art. Nick exits stage left as a convenient device for the showrunners to serve up as a pawn in their thematic chess game, disguised wholly to teach the audience the lesson. He was a sacrificial lamb for the bizarre in-script anti-Nazi rhetoric. It's not edgy or profound to gut a character's arc for shock value. You're not feminist or radical for flattening moral complexity into black and white symbols. It's an absolute mess of lazy, trite metaphors for the current times. This story is important and relevant, and hi, writers, we also live in the world. It's so patronizing, it's so condescending, I'm so exhausted from this cheap process of demoralization. And I looked around for the outrage and confusion and anger that should have echoed across the fandom, and instead I saw silence. Sanitized comment sections, applause from brand-friendly fan accounts with lots of emojis and lots of, OMG, Lawrence putting his hand to his chest. The algorithm drowning dissent like it's inconvenient noise. Entire social media posts being deleted out of nowhere. This isn't fandom and hasn't been an organic one since streaming took over the market or even before. It's narrative control via PR management, and we are all witnessing manufactured consent in real time. I'm not trying to be dramatic or cynical, it's just the truth. This is how it works now. Delivering twisty shock content drives up engagement on platforms, and tracking that engagement data is an enormous factor when OTT platforms are considering each season-to-season renewal. But man, it is still disheartening and mundane to see it happening after so many years of stupidly giving a shit. The emotional response to the episode should have been explosive fury, and instead we get the eerie illusion of consensus, because anything that challenges the lesson gets buried or deleted. They want you and I to feel alone in our bewilderment, and to doubt our own perceptions of the show we've been watching and analyzing for an eon straight. And if you dare to feel betrayed or express that, you're told you're missing the point and somehow have been for an entire decade, along with the majority of the fan base with 2 eyes and a functioning brain in their skulls. It's so absurd it's almost satire. Someday it will be satire, I think. But this is how it is right now, and I'm telling you, it's entirely on purpose. You killed a beloved character not for plot or for truth or to honestly serve the story's natural conclusion, but for theater and for social media engagement, for a moral takeaway, for prestige TV applause, and worse, for the proud, smug, holier-than-thou sniffles of liberal feminists who require all media to pander to the current political thing rather than just telling a good goddamn story. Congrats, the whole IP has been permanently ruined by this type of short-sighted shallow garbage and will never recover its early reputation. This could have been a timeless piece of television with some hiccups, Now it will forever remain a preachy, manipulative product of one particular era, an ode to our fragile culture psyche and its associated political catchphrases and ego interference. It's limp and it's finished, like Game of Thrones was at the end. No one will care or remember or rewatch this drama porn soap opera when all its nuance and ambiguity and soft edges have been snuffed out in the most incomprehensible way. The Handmaid's Tale show will be forgotten, like every other show before it that has gone on too long only to totally blow it in the last inning. It gets proven over and over again, with zero room for doubt, that audiences don't like to be lectured and morally grandstanded to, but here we are yet again. In conclusion, this absolute swill is what happens when writers try to write at the audience rather than for the characters. Nick Blaine somehow became the worst villain amongst these brutal, sadistic people, all the social architects, economists, rapists, abusers, traffickers, slave owners, murderers, not because he was actually always that way, off screen, of course, but because the people who were compelled time and again to watch his complex character evolve and grow had to be taught the lesson. Nick Nazi, Nick complicit, Nick evil forever, Nick dies a coward. Just stop caring. They turned a living, breathing character who we loved and puzzled over for years and paid their bills to spend time with into a morality lecture to tell you how goddamn dumb you are. They replaced his arc with a sermon and then expected us to clap. But I'm not clapping, I'm grieving, because it's all just such an awful, incredible waste. I'm grieving the time and energy I've wasted on a product that the creator stopped caring about and lost interest in understanding. I'm grieving a character who mattered more than this, and a profoundly loving relationship that moved my heart amidst all of that darkness, and a story that once knew how to hold pain with complexity instead of turning it into a hollow, curated shock. They didn't write an ending. They wrote a manipulative virtue signal to make fools out of all of us who actually dared to give a shit. I won't pretend that it's important art with something to say, and I will never again give them the benefit of my dollars, attention, or engagement. So yeah, like I said, that was just some excerpts from a really brilliant essay. The essay title is On Nick Blaine, Narrative Betrayal, and the Engineered Silence of a Fandom. So yeah, that is available to read in its entirety on her Tumblr account, which is A Female Gazing. So A Female Gazing. Yeah, I just really wanted to read some of those points that she made because I found that to be very poetically worded and yeah, it really spoke to me. So now on that note, we're going to talk more about some inconsistencies in the show.
So on the topic of the problem we have with the writing this year, the problem is not just concerning Nick's character retcon and assassination, as we said, but also the fact that when the writing used to be coherent and thoughtful, the past two seasons, so season 5 and 6, were gambling with and ultimately breaking the suspension of disbelief. Meaning, like inconsistencies, illogical plot points, unrealistic character behaviors, pulling the audience out of the fictional world they created. And I've gathered some of the examples we were presented during this season because it's like the most fresh in our minds. It's sometimes we'll also cover or like compare it to older seasons like season 5 or before that even, but I'll try to focus on this season because it is the most jarring in that regard, I'd say.
Agree. Yeah.
So since this is like an meta episode that comes out after the finale has aired, I want to start with a thing that kind of made me laugh and like maybe also made me like scratch my head of the final episode is when Serena and June have this talk about Nick, and June uses those two lines that we still not can wrap our heads around why she says this, if this is to actually commemorate him or like if she's struggling with what she did and mourning him as we see in those scenes, but the lines in contrast
to the little flashback moments at the beginning of the finale.
That she's fondly thinking of Nick and remembers all those good times she had with him, like cuddled up above the garage in his bed. And then Serena tells her that if Nick had ever felt that he had a real choice to leave with June, if June would have given him the option to do so, he would have done it, which is actually contradicting to what we saw in episode 6 of the same season, because when June comes to Serena's place because, she could not go anywhere else, and Nick told her she should go there because Wharton was in his house and interrogating him at this point. June presents a lie to Serena, because Serena obviously asked what she's doing in Gilead. She didn't know. But June lies to her about the Mayday plan. Obviously, she did not present the Mayday plan. She said she went to Gilead and asked Nick to leave with her, and he said no. So why would Serena then say the complete opposite? Like if June had ever asked him, because Serena still believed that lie.
Yep.
She didn't know it was a lie. It was her belief that June came to Gilead still at that point.
Yeah. I think I said this in the episode 10 discussion, maybe, or one of them, that it's almost like they've reversed Serena and June's dialogue or something in this scene, because you have June who knows that he asked her because of the Paris thing. He already was like ready to leave at the end of episode 6. Serena is the one who thinks that he said no to that, but actually Nick asked her. So it's just, it's so confusing and contradictory.
Like for me, it like almost feels like they had this line written into episode 6, and they, I don't know, kind of forgot that this was a lie, that this was not a real statement of June, that she didn't actually ask him to leave.
That's a good point.
And this is also another thing that is presented in episode prior, which is episode 9, where Nick says that June asked him to leave several times, when she actually did maybe once in season 5, episode 9, and they met at the school, and he was on the stairs, and he told her that his new wife Rose was pregnant, so he could not leave. This is the only real time she actually asked him to leave Gilead, to get out.
Yeah, I call that a half ask.
Yeah, half ask. I mean, she told, she did not ask, like, leave with me, come to me, I love you, or something. She did not say that. She said, you should get out there, or like around those lines. But
she just kind of angrily said, why did you tell Mark no? Basically was what she said. Yeah.
Yeah. So the times we are presented, the many times Nick mentions that she supposedly asked him to leave, did not happen. Like, one, yeah, as we said, like one time, it kind of halfway through happened, but it's not within the capacity of what they want us to believe. Maybe she asked him behind closed doors like 500 times, and we never saw that, as much as the 95% of things Nick did do and we never saw. And, you know, maybe it's around that.
Yeah, you can't expect any audience to assume something that wasn't shown.
Yeah, but I like around this example, this is my opinion. I firmly believe they do not follow their own writing choices, or they did not realize that plot hole they are creating with those contradicting lines, like what's happening, what's real, what's a lie, and
right,
this kind of thing anymore.
Yeah, and some people will just take that at face value because they don't remember all of these details. But when you have analyzed the show and made a podcast about it, you remember those things. So it's difficult for us to go with it when we know that hasn't been said or shown in the past. And all of the other reasons that he wasn't able to leave at various times. And the things that the writing wrote him into a corner so that it would not be possible for him to leave, like giving him another wife right after June had left for Canada, and making her pregnant at the same time that Mark Tuello was asking him for help, and having Commander Mackenzie, who we've conveniently forgotten existed, to be so menacing to Nick that he feels trapped and unsafe in speaking to Mark. All of those things have to be considered when you think about whether he had a chance or a choice in leaving Gilead.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because, like, also if you think about how we got to know Gilead in general, that all actions have consequences, that it was not easy to leave, and especially not if you had family and a household. Like, we saw in season 2 whole households getting killed, like mothers, and every single one just for the mere suspicion of having been part of that bombing.
Right.
So
yeah, lots of examples throughout the show of how difficult it is to leave.
So yeah, but like apparently the stakes are not that high anymore. So it's easy for some people to just leave where others cannot.
Right. Yeah, it's like Pros Without Thorns said on TikTok that you can't change the rules of your world midstream, which is what we feel that they have done in a lot of ways with the characters and with the rules of Gilead.
Yeah. Well, this is with the disrupting the suspension of disbelief. Like, they created this world, they set up the rules for seasons, but they started to just tear them down without any explanation. And in my opinion, they should not be surprised that some people, like especially the ones who paid attention and are not just in for the rush of shocking scenes and stuff, if people call that out and comment on this as well.
Yes, definitely.
So on that note, another thing that stuck out to me is also the relationship between Lawrence and Nick this season, because obviously we started out with Nick having to apologize for his punch, and he did, and we get the feeling that Lawrence kind of got over it because he's also, briefing him for the visit of the diplomats from various countries, and they're on good terms again. And he's also trusting him with reuniting all the families, and all those things Nick is responsible for, like as somewhat of being the mayor of New Bethlehem. But then again, in episode 7 of season 6, Lawrence says he never trusted Nick, and he was keeping things from him and just feeding him some intel while talking to June, that June should not be surprised that Nick betrayed her, because he already knew from the start. So he was manipulating him, and it didn't really add up to me.
Yeah, I think Lawrence, there was definitely a manipulation element to how he was using Nick. I mean, you see that in season 4 when he plays Nick on the Chicago, not knowing that June is there, and
episode 5 of season 4.
The way that he handles that council meeting. Yeah. So I think that is true, but I don't think it's from the perspective of him not trusting him. I think it's from the perspective of Lawrence holding something over him and being able to be the puppet master of Nick in those situations, not because he doesn't trust him. I don't feel we've ever had that impression in past seasons that there was a trust issue between them. It was just, I don't think Lawrence would have shown his cards to anyone because that's just who he is. But I don't think he thought, oh, Nick is nefarious and up to no good, and I'm not going to tell him what I'm doing because of that. It was because he wanted to use him for his own purposes.
Exactly. I think we had a similar comparison between June and Lawrence's relationship in season 3, that he wants to teach people a lesson, also to navigate the system, how to make hard decisions, how they are forced to make those decisions, because he's also part of this. Obviously also of the foundation and stuff like this, but also he needs to make the same decisions, even if he probably also doesn't want to make them. And so I always saw a parallel between June Lawrence and Nick Lawrence.
Definitely.
So yeah, as you said, it never felt like that he felt threatened by Nick, or that he could not trust him, or as you said, it did not stick.
Well, and if there was anything Lawrence couldn't trust Nick about, it was because of his allegiance to June, not because of thinking that he was doing something against New Bethlehem or against Lawrence. It was all about, Nick's number one loyalty is June and his daughter. So if something that Lawrence does comes in conflict with that, then of course he's going to choose his family over what Lawrence is telling him to do. That much I can understand, and I can relate to what Lawrence is saying on that. But the fact that he's saying this to June and telling her you shouldn't have trusted him. No, actually, June is the number one person who could have trusted anything Nick ever did was always for her. So it's a complete 180 turn on the direction of the trust, the direction of what Nick was doing this whole time, and what Lawrence knew he was doing this whole time. I mean, there were countless times where Lawrence saw Nick fighting against something that was against June. In episode 3 of season 4, where he told Lawrence, you owe me and you have to help June not die from what's happening with the handmaids escaping and her being tortured. Okay, one example. And Lawrence knew that Nick's allegiance was to June there. He knew that it was to June in the Chicago episode, countless times that he knows that. He knows that when he punched him at the end of season 5, it doesn't make any sense that Lawrence would think that June, of all people, shouldn't trust Nick.
Exactly. Good that we again pointed that out, the receipts to Nick's allegiance to June that Lawrence witnessed.
Yeah. Which has also always been an interesting thing because Lawrence had that allegiance to Eleanor.
It's true. Like I think that's a thing that Lawrence was able to relate to with Nick a lot. That the love that he felt for his own wife, that he probably also would have wanted to be able to help Eleanor in the ways Nick helped June.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a point he admired about him.
I think so too. Yeah. Definitely something they could relate on.
Mm-hmm. And great that we already ventured into the topic of the quote unquote war happening between the Mayday people and the rest of the American military that was, according to Mark Turello himself in episodes 2 and 3 of the very same season, not really existing anymore. This is the reason why Mark Turello went to Mayday people in general. And Mayday is also not trained military operatives. This is just Nick says that right into his face, that Mayday are just normal people, civilians who had a job and are now sent in no man's land or in the war zone, like Luke and Moira volunteered to do, because the American military did not have any resources anymore, but suddenly they do.
Right.
Where do these planes come from?
Well, I think it confuses the idea of being inspired by regular people standing up against something, because the show presented the reality of that in the first few episodes. You're not trained, you're going against a very hardened military of a totalitarian government. The chances of surviving that and winning are slim, but also, of course, we should try. Of course, the resistance is the only option and the option that we should all feel empowered to take. But then also having the military be the backup plan when it was told to us that it was not available kind of discounts that idea of rising up and fighting, because it's yeah, but you were backed by American military that previously was stated to not exist.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we actually trying to say? The message gets very muddled in that.
Exactly. I think so too. It's it was beautifully shot. I'm not trying to diminish this at all. It's just, it raises question marks around me, as you said, because they want to sell the rebellion of civilians. They want to show us that we can accomplish things if we stick together. But they, at the same time, they reduce this to, on the one hand, mainly the women, and on the other hand, also the fact that actually it wouldn't have changed a lot if, as you said, the military didn't help, if they wouldn't have had that aerial strike on Boston to completely dismantle the city's structure, and also the killing of the commanders, if that would have never happened. And it was a plan of Turello and his military peeps. It was not a plan of Luke. Luke did help build the bombs and also had a hand in developing the Mayday plan to bomb Jezebel's and to bomb the gallows, and and to do the sedative poisoning on the wedding, but he was not involved in the plan to place this bomb on the plane or something.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe that after what happened at the execution attempt in the square in episode 8, that if there was military raining down on Boston, that the commanders in DC would not have reacted more to that and come to Boston or sent Gilead military to combat that. And we don't see any of that.
Yeah, and also, I am not an American citizen, but I can look at maps and I can check where Boston is, and where it's quote unquote used to be within the Gilead, system, and it belonged to a state called Massachusetts. And there's other states surrounding this, but it's within this world. It's a city at a coastline of America, which is not America anymore. It's Gilead. It's just one city. It's an important city, maybe, Like, because this is the city we always, quote unquote, lived in within this world, like a lot with June and stuff.
Right. You have to kind of assume it was established as sort of a DC light situation because of the way that the importance that's been placed on it in the show. And yeah, that it's got a lot of the founding commanders of Gilead living within it. So you would think it would be more protected by the vast power of the Gilead structure that has spread across the entire US, that they would be protecting that city more than they seem to be.
And also, it's still surrounded from all sides. It's in the middle of Gilead. It's not like Chicago, for example, you know?
That's like on the border of
on the border to
of
Canada. It's just, it's just like...
Yeah, Boston is hours away.
Yeah, the Great Lakes are in between Chicago and Canada. I can get behind this notion that it was like even the South, like Texas, because it's bordering Mexico. But Boston is, you know, it's like it's surrounded by Gilead. Everything around Boston is Gilead.
Yeah, which is another thing I keep questioning. How is anyone driving from, anyone in quotes, anyone in air quotes, Nick, driving from Boston to like the Toronto or Canadian border and then driving back in the same day? Like, there's a lot of logistical questions to ask. So I don't know.
Maybe he just drove to a airport, like a small airport, you know, the ones.
But I mean, like when he would meet up with June and
I know
random locations and stuff. That's fucking getting in the weeds, but yeah, but you're right, it's not...
I cannot buy it. I cannot get behind this. I mean, it's probably supposed to be the hopeful thing they are wanting to end the show on,
right?
But
it feels forced.
Yeah. Like, this is also something I really don't get. It's like, is she known now? Is she not known?
Yeah.
Mackenzie knows her. Belle knows her.
On site, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the Wild West where you are like hunting for outlaws and stuff like that. But, I mean, people should know how she looks like. Why does this one guardian at the beginning of the episode
not know her
how she looks like? Why does how does he not know how the most wanted women, as established in season 5, as Mackenzie says that? How do they not know what she looks like? I don't get it. It's like, again, very convenient for her, of course.
Yeah. They can use the fact that some people recognize her when it's convenient for them to, when it makes an impact on the scene, like with Belle looking up from the phone and seeing her and recognizing her. And then in scenes like with the group of handmaids in the tunnel and they're needing her to step forward to save the life of another handmaid. Like, yeah, they know who she was, but they wanted that moment of her sacrificing for the handmaid that they were about to kill in that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you feel that, you know?
Yeah, you feel the inconsistency. Absolutely.
Yeah. If it's to just create drama or, you know, a good shot or a scene, it's not good anymore. Like, honestly, when Elizabeth Moss asked our podcast to record our reactions to episode 9, like, she would have gotten only furrowed brows and a lovable face, because it did not make nothing of this made sense.
A lot of disbelieving stares. Yeah. Just like, really? What reality are we in?
Are they actually trying to make us believe anything else?
We're no longer going with you. We're no longer holding hands and skipping down the street. We don't understand what this is.
So yeah.
And
what also feels forced is the fact that we then hear the reaction of Gilead, you know, that some commanders are now repositioned to DC, and this is their reaction. Like, not the military is reacting. No, it's just like commanders relocating themselves to talk about a reaction, like days later. And then suddenly Mackenzie, who is the current quote unquote parent, you know, stealer of Hannah, he got promoted to be a DC commander now. So he will relocate from Colorado, which is like thousands of kilometers or miles, away.
Right.
From Boston, where the rebellion happened. He gets promoted, so he will move back to DC. Like, will he really do that?
Right. Closer to the person that he has to know played a part in taking down Boston that is also his kidnapped daughter's mom.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
one reason why they actually relocated to Colorado in season 3
To get away from June.
Yeah, is to get away from June. But you will still tell me that it's coincidence and it's believable that he will do that. I mean, if he maybe he does it, he's just going alone and leaves his family behind. I mean,
yeah, we don't know.
Could be. I don't think this will happen because this is not how Gilead operates, actually.
And I think it's setting up for the Testaments for her being in a city closer to the action for Agnes/Hannah to be relocated.
Yes, but it does not make sense.
No, it doesn't.
It's like it's convenient writing for what they are planning now, and we know that will happen, which is the Testament sequel show. But again, within this world, it does not make a lot of sense.
Yep. I also keep thinking about how, and this is kind of a tangent, but how Nick and Lawrence were June's closest connections to people in Gilead that cared about her and would help her. And I don't know, there's some kind of weird, cruel, poetic justice in the fact that she killed them and now doesn't have access to the people who would actually want to help her find Hannah. And is that part of the reason why it takes so long? Because she doesn't have that contact there anymore. And she killed her link that was actually working on this for her, even though she was very selfish in using him only for that, using Nick specifically only for that. It's ironic, I guess, that she's killed the people that could help her.
Yeah, you're right.
Not that I want her to keep using them, but you know. And also, what the fuck is the deal with Nick specifically marrying Rose, whose family is BFFs with Commander Mackenzie and his family? Like that, I know we've been told that was just a coincidence, but dude, no way. That's insane, right? I mean, he clearly married her specifically to get closer to them, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Even Serena pulls her face and he's like, oh, what?
Yeah.
What she says something I've forgotten now, but like she's like, oh, well, that's a lovely coincidence, or like, oh, how lucky it is for you two to meet, right after he said that she's the goddaughter of the Mackenzies.
Right.
And yeah, somehow out of every single woman in Gilead, Nick managed to marry Mackenzie's goddaughter, and that is an actual
they just bumped into each other. Total coincidence.
Okay then.
Insane.
Sure. But the Mackenzies have disappeared anyway, so
right.
Of course it's a coincidence, because they're a coincidence. They're not in the show anymore.
Yeah, the setup on that was so good. Like I remember watching, that was one of my favorite plot lines of season 5.
Right.
When that started happening, I was like, oh, this is sexy. I love this.
It was exciting. Oh, might go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what a great plot.
You would think. You think you introduced something like that?
Was that episode 2, I think it was, where they're all at like that dinner party and it's like
right at the beginning of season 5.
Oh, there's tension running every direction and this is like really intriguing and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Huge bummer. Number 477, huge bummer.
Mm-hmm. And again, it is probably because they may have a different story in the Testaments. I'm pretty sure we knew they were going to do a spin-off back in season 5.
Yeah.
So you think they would have put in the work and be like, let's plot this out.
Exactly.
Are we going to use this? Are we not going to use this? Let's not just fill things, random things.
Yeah, why set something up that's going nowhere?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you are going to take this story into the Testaments, we thought that. I thought, great, they're introducing the Testaments already. You know, we're going to get a bit more like maybe something would happen with Mrs. Mackenzie, because we know that's what happens in the Testaments.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were going to do that.
Yep.
And I got really excited because I thought, oh yeah, Nick is going to be involved in that. You know, it's going to be related to his position in the Testament. But no.
And honestly, like, why would it have mattered? Like, what was stopping them from having him make an attempt to get closer to them? Like, oh, it failed. He tried, but it failed. Like, they could have still shown him doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if it wasn't going the direction of he got Hannah out or he...
Which was never going to happen.
No, or like...
But an attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And then he still dies. They could still have killed him, whatever. Like, but at least they could have had that plot go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And it would be so much more satisfying for everybody involved. Like, it's not just Nick fans. Everybody would have been like, okay, well, that makes sense. It does follow the actual story of the show and the books.
Yep. What a disappointment, dude.
Oh, don't even. Like,
We don't have time to get into
Like the blueprint was so good.
It was so good. It was so good.
Like you could not mess that up. You could not mess that up.
Even things that they wrote, even things that they like wove together in like the later seasons were so good.
And they just dropped them. They just dropped them for absolutely
right.
nothing but shock value. It's so disappointing and it's so cheap and it's so frustrating, but whatever.
Yep, for sure. But yeah, I mean, if they had gone in the direction that it seemed like they were going with the Mackenzie storyline, then that's another like check mark in the column of Nick doing something for June and then June flippantly letting him die and not understanding how that's going to impact her. Like, again, 100% not that I think that she should ever be using him the way that she used him in the show, but it's just another aspect of her behavior that I kind of like now seeing the way that things ended, kind of want her to feel the hit of that, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know. I would love for June to have to face these consequences. But the question is if this will happen at all. But I guess we will not really find out because we are not going to watch the sequel anyways.
Right. So. I think it would be a little surprising for them to go that direction in the sequel, considering they haven't explored that now, which felt like something they were going to explore with her character, based on people telling her and her having to face some of the things she'd done and having the mirror held up to her in episode 7 about deaths that she's been responsible for in whatever capacity that we've spoken about already in these episodes. But I just would like that to be explored more because it's an interesting part of her character that I feel like is being left on the table in a way that feels like they're elevating June as this can do no wrong superhero. And the reality is that she's had to dirty her hands a lot in the things that she's done. And I think that's a valid point to bring up and a thing that has been explored in the show in the past that we have just dropped and said, oh, everything June does, there's an excuse for it. Everything June does, there's, so something good in her heart for the reason that she's doing all of this. Like, okay, but she's hurt people pretty selfishly in the past over and over again, which Rachel specifically went into depth on. But like, I just wish that they would address that because I feel like the show has always been really good at addressing the complications of like, yes, this person is like the victim of trauma. Yes, they've experienced a lot of like hellish things that no one should have to experience, but also having survived that in this world means they've had to compromise their morals, do things they might not have wanted to do, carry guilt and shame for it. I want to see that explored because that's part of being human, as we've said in other aspects of this, is there's never going to be a clean black and white situation. Everything has duality to it. And I just wish that they had landed that a little bit more in the final few episodes of her dealing with those consequences and dealing with that.
Facing her own decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Self-reflection, as Kimberly said. I think that would have been nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Not that would make her a bad person. We completely understood that before.
No.
We understood why she had to do the things she had to do. There were certain things I wish she hadn't done. Of course, she did some like very shitty things, mainly thinking of Matthew, the way she bullied her, but other things throughout the seasons that she's done that have been covered thoroughly within these podcasts. But still seeing her have to face it in a like, okay, I'm going to take on what's happened to me and really examine these parts of myself and what does this mean and how is that going to affect how I move forward? That's very interesting to me.
Yes.
Especially when the show seemed to be, using other characters in her life to hold up a mirror to her behavior. Like the scene with Moira in the Jezebel's room where she finally goes off on June for treating her trauma and her life like the center of the universe when Moira and others have been hurting too. And Moira also has that moment in, I think it's episode 4, where she says she's not going to live June's life anymore. And then we have Luke telling her she's being disrespectful to them for not trusting them to take care of themselves. And we have Nick, of course, on the road in episode 7, reminding her that she's also had to do really horrible things to survive Gilead. And even in episode 3, he's reminding her of why he's out there again, risking his life for her and for her family. And she hasn't faced or questioned that. It's just been a given for her to ask him and expect him to do it. So seeing her have to confront those parts in herself was something I was looking forward to happening at the conclusion of the series. And it seemed so logical that was the trajectory of the season. But they just veered completely away from that after episode 7.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I was actually going to say something about like I couldn't.
Oh, no, do if you want.
No, it's cool. It's fine. It's cool. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that makes me feel things, but I can't be articulated enough to just
rage.
comment on it. Yeah, that's exactly it. I was just gonna.
That makes me feel things. Like,
Oh no.
yeah.
When I think I'm done, I'm like, I don't want to have an opinion on this anymore because I do care, obviously, I do care. I want not to care, but I want to be done with it. But every time anybody mentions anything,
the rage just comes right back up.
Yeah, it just comes back up. Exactly.
It's like a volcano, like a dormant volcano. It's just waiting.
Yep. It's not gone. I think it is. I wake up sometimes like I don't even remember. Just
Who
like
gives a shit? I give a shit. Actually,
clearly, I do.
There was a Tumblr post actually that I reposted where it was like a meme or something where they were like, I can't remember the specific thing, but it was basically that. It was like, I don't care at all. Meanwhile, cares a lot. Like cares so much that it's ruining my life.
Like the Rose meme of like, I'm fine.
Totally
I'm
fine.
not fine. I'm not doing okay.
Yeah. Well, we've gone on for almost 2 hours.
It's been 2 hours. Insert the Homer gif of going into the bushes.
Sliding into the bushes. Yeah. Well, I think the point from like 45 minutes ago was just that June's self-reflection journey seems to have just totally stalled halfway through season 6 after all this buildup. And yeah, that's just really disappointing.
And we had these aspects in earlier seasons.
For sure.
With voiceovers and the way she was broken mentally over Omar's death and guilted into thinking that she was responsible for it. And
the way Aunt Lydia manipulated that in June. And of course she had to harden herself to that to survive. But now that she's, in quotes, free and living this life where she's trying to acclimate June and offer it into the same person, I want to see her have to deal with that. I want to see her be like, I did do those things. I'm not going to carry these things as guilt that completely mentally breaks me down the way Aunt Lydia wanted to do, the cruel things Aunt Lydia tried to do to her, but I'm still going to have to deal with that. That's what I wanted to see. Anyway.
Yeah, like for me, it also felt like, because in season 5, we explored a lot of her trauma, I think, with like, especially after the killing of Fred and going to therapy and Luke's rape and, all those things that were triggered through her trauma. But I get the feeling that after she helped Serena give birth, this all of kind of went to like into nothingness. It's like this one experience like completely healed her in a way, and she could become kind of this badass again. And she still does have like self-reflective traits, maybe. Like I think we see it in episode 3 when Nick and her have this conversation, and she admits that it must be hellish to love her, which is actually something that is self-reflective.
Yeah,
but it's lost like pretty easily again too.
Well, and I think that's why we thought that's what the season was doing, was kind of bringing those elements together of like, here's the things I've done, here's the things I maybe haven't processed about myself, about other people, and it's going to be messy and maybe a little bit difficult to face, but I'm going to do that because I want to recover and heal from what's happened to me. And I think her last few episodes were a shift from that in a way that felt inauthentic to the character up until maybe episode 6 of this season. And the fact that we suspected that was where she was headed with her journey and her arc means that they had thought about it and built that, and then they just kind of let it die in the last few episodes. And I feel like they never resolved that, as well as many other things in the show that...
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, I mean, in conclusion, the things we've been just talking about, we've been just comparing one season, which mainly is like the same season, episode 1, 2, 5, maybe also 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10 separately. Like we've putting those against each other because they do not make sense within each other anymore. They are not coherent. And we do not even have to talk about the past seasons, because if you just look at this very last season and compare the very first 6 episodes to the last 4, you can sense the disruption
Yeah.
You can sense that it doesn't really make sense anymore. Or like it was rushed. It was a lot of setup for the Testaments, I think. Like they needed to shift certain characters in a certain direction without having much of a development. And I felt that.
Yeah. I think they could have started doing a lot of this in season 5. A lot of season 5 felt like treading water, where they should have been setting a lot of this up then. So, yeah.
One funny thing of episode 9 also was the fact that June offered to be the getaway driver for Lawrence, I thought. Because, I mean, like, what? They are still within Gilead at that point. I mean, there was a small rebellion at the gallows happening, but like the commanders were all still alive at that point, you know?
Yeah, in the airport. I mean, I don't know logistics exactly about that, but the airport's within Boston/Gilead. So she's going into proper Gilead to deliver Lawrence to this flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without a disguise, as the most wanted person within the...
Right. How's she crossing back across the border by herself without anything? With just her in a car? Like what? I guess it was easy to get out of Gilead this whole time, and she could have just grabbed a car and driven to the border. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Mayday is stationed at the Boston Globe now, right? So she just has to get there. But if there are still Gilead commanders going to the Boston airport, she's crossing checkpoints and Gilead occupied territory to get from Mayday headquarters to the airport and back. And there's no way she's not getting stopped multiple times and questioned, right?
Right. That's how it used to be.
Yep.
So fucking frustrating. The fact that she goes to the hangar
and there's no security. She gets there, no security.
There's absolutely not a single guardian there. Like, what do you mean that there's no security? There's no like checkpoints. There's one thing, but there's no one there to like protect these guardians commanders, who have just been bombed and been targeted.
Yeah, at the airport. And you know what's crazy about that is if they had just put them there, we wouldn't have been like, June killed Nick, because we'd be like, oh, there's guards everywhere. What was she supposed to do?
She could have never done anything, but they're like, oh yeah, she could have. Like, what do you mean?
2 problems solved.
And we also know that they weren't expecting him.
No.
He got on the plane and was like, oh, hello.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
Fancy seeing you here.
So no one knew he was there.
Yeah.
So if she had called out for him, he come off the... No one was looking through the windows either. Like, no one realized that he was getting on the plane. So, if you wanted to make it look like she didn't have a choice, fucking make it so.
Stick the 40 guardians there that should have been there anyway, because that's how Gilead works.
Or somebody seeing him getting on the plane. Like, all of the other commanders behind him were like, oh, hi, yeah, you're on the stairs already. Obviously, we know that you're here. But no, he's the only one to get... Because, again, it was for shock value. He was there like, oh, everybody gets on the plane. Right at the end, that's when we find out he's also boarding that plane.
Yep.
Makes no fucking sense, but sure.
With her having, as Tina says, 5 business days to do something about it before he actually gets on the plane.
Yeah.
Literally just wave a hand, like when he turns sideways, whatever. We could go on about this for the next year.
Nothing. A cough, anything.
Any noise, scuff a shoe across the ground, anything.
Any noise, he would have turned his head. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Completely insane.
We could literally go insane with this, yeah.
We could do a 3-hour podcast just on that.
Yeah, on that fucking scene alone.
Yep.
There was something else. I've read something else. I think it was a comment on and it was something like Elizabeth said, and it's like, people acting like blowing up a whole plane made more sense than just Nick shooting the 4 commanders. There was literally no guards. Like, he could have just she could have been like, hey Nick, let's kill these people. And he were like, okay, sure.
Yeah, actually, can you go in that plane and shoot them and grab Lawrence and just get in this car?
Yeah, exactly. And save Lawrence as well. You can do that, right?
Yeah, they blew up a plane for like a couple of dudes.
There's 4 people in that fucking plane. There's no one.
That's so stupid.
Oh,
that's such a good point. It's so dumb.
Oh,
endlessly dumb. Yeah, at least have 40 of them in there or something.
There was 4 commanders and no guards. None.
Yeah, and they're all drinking in the back. Like, he could have definitely shot them before they knew what was going on. And tell me that Nick didn't want to shoot Wharton anyway for what he just did.
He would have, of course.
Calhoun.
Yeah.
Calhoun was a piece of shit.
And Nick hated him from the very beginning. He would mate with Putnam. Anyway.
Yeah.
We could go on about this forever.
Also, literally, oh man, we're getting so in the weeds again. But June could have just actually involved Nick in this whole plan to begin with and been like, hey, I know that Like, well, she doesn't know that he killed Putnam, but like she did.
No, that's the thing though. Like, this is what really frustrates me. I'm like, oh, rose tinted glasses. She doesn't know about all of these things he's done behind the flipping scenes.
And for
like,
her.
we've seen this for her, or
for
like
her and
no,
for
like
the greater good.
Esther and
For
like
Esther.
everybody else.
Yeah,
Like, he's been doing these
exactly.
things because that's who he is and who like So you're like, oh no, we're romanticizing him. No, we didn't. Like, that's not true, June.
You're romanticizing him with things she didn't actually see.
Yeah, like he doesn't know about the flipping letters and that they made a difference. Like, he says like they made a difference, but he doesn't know what the fucking difference is.
And what he actually did to achieve it.
Yeah, like, oh.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because they're like, oh, everything's from June's perspective, but like,
no, it's not.
So you're showing us Nick doing good things that she doesn't even know about. That doesn't match what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's bullshit.
Oh, that was a good rant. That felt good.
Good and bad, because it's again, I just bring my rage back up.
Yeah, it just makes you see red, but it's also kind of like cathartic to get it out.
We are right. We are fucking right.
We're right.
Get validated by ourselves.
And their previous freaking source material, source material.
Oh no.
Margaret Atwood's material in the original 4 seasons that.
Oh, it's so good though, because she mentions about like a play and a movie, and I actually looked into it, and in the play that she mentions before this is 2015.
A play of The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's cool. Didn't know that.
The previous one. And he's also main day there. Like, everybody that's ever adapted this fucking story has had Nick as Mayday, because that's what she intended.
Yep, that's what she wrote. Well, this could segue right into your Mayday Nick segment. We accidentally created a bridge.
Me swearing. Oh,
great.
Gosh. So we, specifically you and I, Megan, have come across a lot of people saying that there isn't any mention of Nick being Mayday in the books, which we're going to prove that's not true. But it made us think that maybe some people haven't actually read or listened to an audiobook or a book where the symposiums weren't included, which to us is wild, because obviously Margaret Atwood's gone through a lot of like trouble and effort to put these in the books, and she's written 3 different ones. One in the original book, one in the Testaments, and she also made a different one for one of the audiobooks anniversary ones, Megan.
Yeah, she added to it. It was an anniversary edition.
So she's written 3 different symposiums, so it's obviously very important to her. For those whose first language may not be English, like myself, I wanted to explain what a symposium is. And a symposium is a conference or a meeting to discuss a particular subject. And Margaret has been very vocal about how important it is for people to record history. So it's not rewritten and it's not misinterpreted, and because it's the only way we can actually learn from it. So this is an actual excerpt from a book of her essays called Burning Questions about recording history. And she says that at the end of the Handmaid Tales, we visit an academic symposium held a couple of 100 years after the Gillian regime is over, thus telling us that it is indeed over. This is what becomes of the past when it is past. It's transformed into a history book, or it becomes a play or an historical novel or a film or a television series, or it becomes a museum exhibition or a statue or a painting, or it becomes a subject for academic study. And symposiums are held about it, and animated discussions take place. History isn't what happened. It's the stories we tell about what happened, how we interpret and present what happened, and that interpretation and presentation is always taking place in the now of the speaker or interpreter, because where else can it take place? Therefore, the part as we know it is always changing. Some parts of it are buried, but then dug up again. Some are spun positively and then spun negatively. Statues are erected to admire or important figures, and then they are pulled down. So the Testament begins with the unveiling of a statue. It is a statue of Aunt Lydia. Granted, it is an obscure location. She is, after all, a woman, and women by and large do not get statues in Gilead, but it is nonetheless a statue. I won't tell you what has become of it by the time of the next symposium on Gileadian studies at the end of the Testament, except to say that this is what does become of statues when old and disliked regimes are swept away and new orders take over. So I wanted to read that bit because, again, she did write the second symposium to explain what happened to these figures in the books. And that is important, and that is true, and that is what happened to them. And she does tell us what happened to Aunt Lydia and everybody else at the end of the symposiums. I think that meant that she wasn't going to tell us what happened in her essays in this book. So I have no doubt that these historical notes aren't just important to the creator of the book, but they are also essential to understanding the full picture of the story. And to ignore or dismiss them is very disrespectful to her work. I'm totally certain that Margaret Atwood's intent was to tell us what happened to these characters and to give us some information on what happened to them after we left them in their stories. Her intent has always been for Nick to be Mayday, and that's why he's written him to be Mayday in 2 different books. So when the showrunners and writers come out in interviews and they tell us that we've been watching the show wrong and what do we think he was doing in the 90% of the time he wasn't on screen, well, this is what we thought he was doing as per the source material. We thought he'd been working for the resistance in some way or form because that's what he should have been doing as intended by the creator of the story and this pre-established character. And the fact that she's come out later on to confirm that it is what we know and we haven't misinterpreted her work, the writers of the show have.
No, I mean, I agree with that. If I can piggyback off of you that the symposiums are extremely important to Margaret Atwood, the epilogue should not be, discounted or dismissed. I think so many people get to the end of the chapter and they think the end. And they don't realize that Margaret really uses the historical notes and the symposium as a continuation of the story to clear up the ambiguity. And she even jokingly in an interview, I wish I could remember, but said that she wrote the testaments just so she could write another symposium. So they are important to her. And the symposiums are where we actually are the reasons why we get the story to begin with. I mean, we find out that it's Professor, how do you say it? Picciotto, perhaps? I'm probably butchering it. I'm sorry, but it's him and his studies collecting all the artifacts and the letters, and they're piecing together her story. So without him piecing together the story, there would be no The Handmaid's Tale. So it should not be overlooked how important they are. If somebody just wants to just be like, oh, whatever, it's just historical notes. No, it is her story. It's why we have a book. It's why we have a series.
And that's how they got the tapes from The Handmaid, because they were buried somewhere and they dug them out.
Yeah. Professor Picciotto and his, gang of historians, I guess, find the tapes and they put them all together. They weren't dated. So apparently they had to go through a whole mess of trying to piece her story together because there were no dates. He actually kind of is like, hey, next time somebody wants to do this, maybe tell us the date. So, I mean, it's a very important part of the story.
Yeah. It's strange to me to read a book and not read to the absolute last page, cover to cover.
And I had people, I've said, I've mentioned, well, this is not what happens in the books. That doesn't happen in the books. Do you mean that doesn't happen in the book?
Well, yeah, there's people who discount it. They're like, the symposium is not the book.
Oh, no, completely. And they're so have you read the book? Yes, have you?
No, but they don't. They're like, after the end, nothing matters.
What was she?
And it's like, then why would she write this? It's quite lengthy. Yeah.
20 pages.
It matters. It matters. And
3 times. She's done it in 3 different books, 2 books and an audiobook.
Actually, yeah, it matters more so in her books than others. Some just are historical notes with tidbits, but this is actually a story with characters.
Yeah.
Well, and to me, it's like the framing device. It's like when you watch a movie. I mean, they're not the beginning and end like they sometimes are in movies, but sometimes you watch a movie and somebody's telling a story at the beginning and then you flash to the story and then they conclude with their commentary on it. That's what this feels like to me. Is it's like this is all framed within the context of the historical notes and the symposiums. So
within the story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's like this isn't just a story that exists in a vacuum. It exists because of that, like you guys are saying. And so to discount the framing of the entire thing is you're not going to have perspective on it. You're not going to be looking at it through the right lens.
Which is exactly why seasons 5 and 6 didn't make sense to us.
Yeah, because they ignore them.
Because we are people who were avid book readers. We read the symposiums and we held on to that. They would honestly honor those. They were so important. So in the back of our mind, we always knew Nick was going to be Mayday, that he was part of the embedded resistance that infiltrated the power structure and helped bring it down from the inside. And seasons 1 through 4, they did a great job kind of giving us little Easter eggs that could point to that direction. And then all of a sudden, they went off the rails. It's like they completely abandoned ship, and I have no idea why. So it doesn't even make sense to me. I don't even want to rewatch even seasons 1 through 4
Because it doesn't make sense anymore.
because it goes nowhere now. All the little Easter eggs I saw, all the conversations he had, everything. It doesn't make sense because they're trying to tell me that, well, actually, he was never that and just an evil Nazi who happened to like June. I'm sorry, but that's not Nick in the books. And it was not Nick to me ever. And it never will be. So I will never be watching
Exactly. Yeah.
this again.
They've tried. They tried. We're not buying it. And again, because we read the books before we even watched the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a pre-established character. And yeah.
Yeah, and you expect, adaptations or retellings of things in a different medium to take some liberties, but that's extreme. That's completely changing the foundation of a character and doing it in the final moments, not doing it from the beginning. So it feels extremely jarring, and yeah, like a lot of threads were just dropped in favor of
Drama.
this turn. And
yeah, but that's the thing, like if they wanted to go that way, which again, I think you guys mentioned it in the last previous episodes, but if they had tried to take this turn with the character and they had done it properly, like they did have 2 seasons to turn him, but they turned him like literally 4 episodes before the end.
Mm-hmm.
And also to bear in mind, he's not in season 10.
In episode 10, yeah.
So it was in literally 3 episodes with like hardly any actual screen time either. Like he's hardly in it.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe episode 6. There's no enough build up.
Yeah, I think 7, 8, 9, it's probably 10, 15 minutes of screen time, maybe something at the most.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, you try to turn this character, but you've not cared enough to actually give it a real arc.
Yeah.
No, and I feel like they couldn't because
they didn't want us to.
Well, they didn't want us to think a man could be good, I guess. All commanders are bad.
But that was only a tune that they've been singing at the end of it. Like he's been showed, like if you want him to show him to be horrible and one of them and like you just like the rest of them, they should have showed him being like the rest of them. But they've made a point of not showing him to be like the rest of them. They've actually made that canon. They've put a lot of like his screen time to be completely different to the rest of the other commanders.
Yeah.
So if you want to commit to that, that's fine. That's cool. You don't want us to like Nick. You don't want us to focus on the love story, even though the love story is clearly very important to Margaret Atwood because it was a big part on the first book. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't care about that.
Wow.
But I do care about like consistency in writing. And, when we commit to a show, again, a show that is based on a book, like I was talking to my partner recently through this season, and when he found out what was going on with Nick, they're like, but these, he knows about the book. I've talked to him about the book for years and years and years, and he's rewatched, like, this is a guy who is a casual viewer, but we've rewatched this show every single season because I've made him, because he has a very poor memory. So I've always made sure that he rewatched it. So he's rewatched it 5 times. So he knows who Nick is in the show and the book. And when he found out what was going on with him, like, that's like, he's a very big like Lord of the Rings fan, and he was like, imagine like at the end, like in the 3rd movie, they made Aragorn evil. And it's true, it's like literally doing that. Like you have a pre-existing character that everybody loves, and then you all of a sudden you just change it because you feel like it, and it's like, okay, but sure, but that doesn't make any sense, and we're not buying it, and we're not silly for believing that you were going to take a different direction with this character, because that's the direction that
it is in the book.
Taken in the book, yeah.
No, and we don't have to buy it.
No, yeah. They don't get to choose. They don't get to dictate how we do it.
I don't even know how they buy it at this point. I love this 95% of the time. Come on. We're also not idiots. We also know that if he is a mole and that if he is embedded resistance, that he has to play both sides. Mm-hmm. We know that he has to do horrible things.
Oh, yeah.
Any mole, like let's say a mole is infiltrated in a drug ring, I'm sorry. They're there when people are being killed. They're amongst horrible things.
They're doing the shitty things, yeah, totally.
But it's on behalf of, the greater good always. And that's what they robbed him of. It's like, yeah, okay, we know he was a commander, basically. How long has he been a commander? Like a year? Like, come on. They make it seem like he was a commander since day one.
Less. She was pregnant then. And Nicole is like Benjamin Button, surely, but like
No, Nicole was born and he still wasn't a commander. I mean, he got made a commander because he was holding Fred hostage to get Nicole out of Gilead.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So what, 6 months they come? Oh, Jesus, yeah. I've never actually thought about that, but yeah.
So he's this big bad. All commanders are bad for what, 2 weeks? Come on, people. No, he was a low status driver. Basically, for the first 3 years of Gilead, or when he met June, he was still low status.
At least, well, it's just freaking timeline. Just forget that. Let's not go down that path.
Oh, the timeline is ridiculous. But we can say at the very least 3 years into Gilead, he was still a gardener boy, shoveling gravel, not even worthy enough to be married. And they're like, he's horrid. He's the
he's the main reason Gilead exists.
He's the OG bad daddy Gilead. It's like, oh, and he's living above a garage. Interesting. Okay, that's how you treat your heroes. Okay.
We've had one of the most important people or person in the show, Eric Tuchman. He's the showrunner this last season because Bruce Miller stepped down to move into the Testament. So that was left to Jordan Chung and Eric Tuchman. So he said on a comment on Instagram in one of the Hulu posts that somebody mentioned that it seemed like the writers this season hadn't rewatched the show or didn't remember a lot of the stuff that had happened in the show. And he made a very snarky comment replying to that message saying that he had been in the show from the very beginning. He's had many chats with Margaret Atwood. And this is something that it's in the book from the show called The Art and Making of the Handmaid's Tale. And it's a quote from Kira Snyder, which is the writer of 108. This is the writer that was there from the very beginning, season 1. This is about Nick. And she said, but how did he get there? Part of the fun of that episode was to kind of peel back the mystery of this young man and see where he came from, how he got recruited, and how this idealism was turned against him, how he was curdled by the corrupt system of Gilead, how he keeps trying to find something to believe in, some way to make things work, make things good, which is what we see with him becoming an eye. He doesn't have a lot of ways to strike back at the commander, but through his role as part of the secret police informant network, he has the ability to try to keep a check on the man. And this coincides with what is said in the book about Nick and his involvement in Gilead. It says, this is again a segment from the book.
From The Handmaid's Tale, right? From the first,
From the Handmaid's Tale, yeah, from the first book. Nick, who by the evidence of the very existence of the tape must have helped offered to escape, the way in which he was able to do this marks him as a member of the shadowy Mayday underground, which was not identical with the underground female road, but has connections with it. The latter was purely a rescue operation, the former quasi-military. A number of Mayday operatives are known to have infiltrated the Gileadian power structure at the highest levels, and the placement of one of their members as a chauffeur to Waterford would certainly have been a coup, a double coup, as Nick must have been at the same time a member of the ICE, as such chauffeurs and personal servants often were. Waterford would, of course, have been aware of these, but as all high-level commanders were automatically directors of the ICE, he would not have paid a great deal of attention to it. I would not have let it interfere with his infraction of what he considered to be minor rules.
Yeah, so that was in the symposium from the first book.
First book, yeah.
So what you're getting at is that in the symposium that they're letting us know that Nick isn't just, he's an embedded resistance member. And they're letting you know that oftentimes, yes, like chauffeurs and drivers were eyes, but they were also Mayday. They were plants, and they were meant to infiltrate the power structure, working their way from a low status driver to maybe a guardian of a higher status to eventually the top commander who could help take Gilead down from the inside. And unfortunately, we really didn't see that come to play in the show much. Obviously, not with Nick. So Symposium is telling you right there that that's how we're supposed to see Nick, driver, who's actually an embedded resistance member who infiltrated the power structure. And so I feel we were robbed of that. But I'm going to share what Margaret Atwood herself has said and how she has herself said that he is an embedded resistance person. So let me just play that.
I wanted to ask about Nick, because I find him really difficult to figure out, and I can't work out if Nick and Offred are actually in love, or if this is something entirely artificial that is a comment on what happens to love in totalitarian regimes.
Because to make it clear, I mean, she has an affair with Nick, which becomes...
Well, she has a mandated affair with Nick.
Yes, but it becomes something more than that, doesn't it? Or it appears to.
Yeah, as it very well possibly
by
would.
Serena, but
absolutely.
It seems like it goes beyond the remit that sort of Serena
well,
set.
As it might well, to put yourself in that situation. So he is an embedded resistance person, which we find out quite far on.
There you go. So from the words right out of Margaret Atwood's mouth that he is an embedded resistance person. The podcast is the BBC Book Club, Radio 4, and I believe it was in 2018, June.
And that was the show was already out.
Yes, the show was already out.
So she came out saying this
after
while the show was going. Yeah.
After season 1, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
After season 1, yeah.
Would have been probably mid-season 2, I think, because season 2 was in 2018.
Right.
So the takeaway from that would be like, if they did consult with her, which we know they did at the beginning, she would have told them that. And that might be why Kira Snyder had that belief that he was an embedded Mayday agent.
Well, I mean, even if she didn't, it implies it in the symposiums. I mean, yes.
I know she has said it, but like, I'm sure she would have.
Right.
He must have told them if they had any conversation with him, as Eric Tishman has come out as late as a month, 2 months ago, saying that. So he was there. This man has been there from the beginning, and he did have the same understanding as Kira Snyder, who wrote his flashback episode.
Well, I feel like it was evident that he did.
Of course. Oh, well, we know that. Yes, absolutely.
I feel like Eric actually wrote him
very well,
beautifully, until he didn't.
Yeah, up to maybe season 5. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it seemed right on. Like all the little Easter eggs seemed to maybe one day.
We're really hoping that.
Yeah, we were really hoping it.
Yeah.
And oh gosh,
because how couldn't it, right? Like
it should have.
How wrong can you get it? But here we are.
Here we are.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a segment about Luke being a cunt.
Wait, Luke being what?
A cunt.
A cunt. Got it.
Yeah, so that's literally what I've called it. And there's a lot of that.
Let's do
it. So this is also about Serena making speeches and the watching her being hysteric and fake crying, mascara all over her face. So this is June, or the handmaid in the book, and Luke, her husband. And he says, "We thought she was funny, or Luke thought she was funny. I only pretended to think so. Really, she was just a little frightening." Again, Luke not taking it seriously from the very beginning.
Yeah, and June not feeling comfortable expressing how she really feels.
Exactly, yeah. Like she can't be honest with him.
Yep.
Then there's another moment in the book where a woman tries to steal Hannah in the supermarket where the handmaid and Luke are. And she says this. She was crying, the woman, she was crying and saying it was her baby. The Lord had given it to her. He'd send her a sign, which sounds a lot like someone we know. Someone that has been given a redemption arc, who's claimed to be the love of the handmaid. Anyway, at the end of that scene in the book, Hannah's returned to Luke and the handmaid, and Luke rises it off by saying she's just a crazy woman.
Yeah, similarly, actually,
there is a scene like that.
The hospital scene. Yeah, they just do it when she's an infant, and tries to steal Hannah, and Luke kind of dismisses June, like, stay here, and runs down the hall to get her. And yeah,
I think that obviously some of the writers, the male writers, don't see how he's written in the book, and they went with what Margaret Atwood wrote. And then I think later on they realized that they actually were written him to be this likable, because that's, I think, what Atwood's
The intention was.
Intention was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that they didn't actually, I don't think they realized, because that's why they got so upset, because it's so like its first season is taking a lot of it from the book.
Right.
And that's completely intentional. Like there's every single bit of those memories he has of Luke, there's always a little bit like residual uncertainty from her. Like she wasn't sure if that's what he meant. And I think that's quite telling and very intentional.
Yeah, it's almost showing that their relationship was strained in some ways, that she never felt completely herself in that relationship.
Which again, it does make sense because it's also mentioned about his wife, his previous wife, and she mentions that she never saw her, she never met her, she only heard her on the phone.
In the book, it says that?
In the book, yeah.
Yeah.
Leaving angry messages and something like that. Which again is really telling of the way Luke went about having an affair. And again, this is very similar to how it's shown in the show. So when the women lost their jobs, very similarly to how it happens in the book, the handmaid goes home, and when she talks to Luke about it, this is what happens. It's only a job, he said, trying to soothe me. I guess you get all my money, I said, and I'm not even dead. I was trying for a joke, but it came out sounding macabre. Hush, he said. He was still kneeling on the floor. You know I'll always take care of you. I thought, already he's starting to patronize me. Then I thought, already you're starting to get paranoid. Which again, I think is very telling of the relationship. It carries on. There were martyrs, of course, a lot of women and some men. Luke said it would be futile. I had to think about them, my family, him and her, which means Hannah, obviously. Again, it's always about him and what he wants.
Yes, we definitely see examples of that in the show.
I think they did a really good job of showing that in the book, but it seems like, sorry, in the show, but it seems like it was maybe unintentional, or they didn't realize, because otherwise, why would they be so upset that people didn't like Luke?
Yeah, and continue pushing him so much in the show when the first couple seasons of the show, I really thought I understood what they were trying to say with the character, and there was a place for that character, and it made sense. And it definitely feels like there was a point where they decided, no, we're going to make him
different, try a different personality, as Kate says.
Yeah, and we're going to try to push him forward more and forget about the things that we were originally trying to say with this character, or that the book was trying to say with this character, just so that they could string the love triangle along, which is a very weak reason to do that.
The love triangle that they didn't want to, So there's another moment in the book that is a good example of how he is a very patronizing man. That night, after I lost my job, Luke wanted me to make love. Why did I want to? Desperation alone should have driven me, but I still felt numbed. I could hardly even feel his hands on me. What's the matter? He said. I don't know, I said. We still have, he said, but he didn't go on to say what we still had. It occurred to me that he shouldn't be saying we, since nothing that I knew of had been taken away from him. We still have each other, I said. It was true. Then why did I sound, even to myself, so indifferent? He kissed me then, as if now I'd say that things could get back to normal. But something had shifted, some balance. I felt shrunken, so that when he put his arms around me, gathering me up, I was as small as a doll. I felt love going forward without me. He doesn't mind this, I thought. He doesn't mind it at all. Maybe he even likes it. We are not each other's anymore. Instead, I am his.
Yeah, the shrunken small reference there in the book is something that you see a lot in the show with how she acts around him. That's a word I think of often.
Yeah, the way she kind of just really gets small. Yeah, even when they're talking, and she just doesn't seem herself ever. But again, this seems to come from even before she was in Gilead, and broken and raped and
right. And he's the only one that she acts that way around. She has a very specific way of acting with him.
Yeah,
that's different from everybody else.
But again, sounds really intentional.
You would think so.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, bizarre. And then there's this question in her mind that really reminds me of the whole relationship with Gilead that we've seen in the show, which is, so look, what I want to ask you now, what I need to know is, was I right? Because we never talked about it. By the time I could have done that, I was afraid to. I couldn't afford to lose you. So she thinks about this after that. So she's already in Gilead. She can't talk to him. So this is just a memory she's having. She's talking to herself. So there's another scene, which is quite hot to read.
So they had a cat before Gilead, and obviously they're trying to escape with Hannah. And Luke goes on saying, the cat is what he said. Cat, I said, against the wall of his sweater. We can't just leave her here. I hadn't thought about the cat. Neither of us had. Our decision had been sudden, and then there had been the planning to do. I must have thought she was coming with us, but she couldn't. You don't take a cat on a day trip across the border. Why not outside? I said. We could just leave her. She'd hang around and meow at the door. Someone wouldn't notice we were gone. We could give her away, I said. One of the neighbors. Even as I said this, I saw how foolish that would be. I'll take care of it, Luke said. And because he said it instead of her, I knew he meant kill. That is what you have to do before you kill, I thought.
Man.
Yeah.
I know it might not be the smartest thing, but there's no way I would leave without my cats.
I know, that's literally, I was saying this, like all of your cats as well. I only had two, but like,
they'd just all be in the car. Sorry.
I'm a baby. Like, yeah, like
yeah, they're my children.
I'm taking them to the sea. I've never seen the sea.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's actually that crazy to take your cat on a day trip. People take their cats around to the park.
Yeah, put them in a little leash.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Slug being a cat.
But I mean, you know, I can kind of understand the point of showing something like that or explaining something like that in the book because it shows just how dire the situation was and how brutal it all was. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that might not be the worst, but I just wanted people to know that. Look, it's cats. Unlike Nick, we don't see Nick killing any kittens. So I wanted to move on to Nick and who he is in the book. So I wanted to talk about the distinction between guardians and angels, which are two different positions within the Gileadian system, especially for men. So I'm going to go with the definition of angels. So angels are second commanders, high-ranking men, Gilead's military army. They're in the front line in wars, fighting to take over the remaining parts of America, conduct executions of Gilead enemies, considered heroes and true believers, have wives, and sometimes are allowed to have handmaids. So if Nick would have been so instrumental to the creation of Gilead, like Serena said in season 3, and like the showrunners and writers have tried to make us believe this season, the next promotion should have been for him to probably be a commander, I presume, but instead he gets promoted to a guardian just by having a wife, really, not much more. But anyway, there's some bits from the book that actually does describe why Nick couldn't have been part of the creation of Gilead because he is a guardian, and there's some very clear descriptions of what a guardian is.
Yeah, it's interesting. They never really talked about the angels on the show at all.
Yeah, they just completely got rid of them, which again, that's fine. But again, because of the definition of who a guardian is, we know that Nick is a guardian, he's not a military guardian, even if that's the distinction that they want to make in the show, because the angels aren't really included in it. But he's not considered an angel in the book, he's a guardian.
He's considered a guardian in the book, which guardians, the angels were the ones who were in the war, right?
The actual military, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Again, there's some really good descriptions of it. So this is the first introduction that we have of Nick in the book. He's wearing the uniform of a guardian. So he's not an angel, meaning he did not fight in the Crusades. This is also how we meet Nick in the show, of course, before they decided he was an evil commander that created Gilead single-handedly and decided to work as a driver, scooping gravel from one place to another for shits and giggles. That's my commentary on that. The text in the book continues. But his cap is tilted at a jaunty angle and his lips are rolled to the elbow, showing his forearms tan but with a stipple of dark hairs. He has a cigarette stuck in the corner of his mouth, which shows that he too has something he can trade on the black market. I know this man's name, Nick. I know this because I've heard Rita and Cora talking about him. And once I heard the commander speaking to him, Nick. I won't be needing the car. He lives here in the household over the carriage. Low status. He hasn't been issued a woman, not even one. He doesn't rate. Sound defect. Lack of connections. So yeah, a big Gilead guy.
Mm-hmm. And they sort of stick with that in the first episode of the show. Low status. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how we met him. That's pretty much taken from the book, yes. And it carries on by saying, but he acts as if he doesn't know this or care. He's too casual. He's not serving enough. It may be stupidity, but I don't think so. It smells fishy, they used to say. Or I smell a rat. Misfit as an odor. Despite myself, I think of how he might smell. No fish or decaying rat. Tan skin, moist in the sun, filled with smoke. A sigh, inhaling. He looks at me and sees me looking. He has a French face, lean, whimsical, all planes and angles, with creases around the mouth where he smiles. He takes a final puff of his cigarette, lets it drop to the driveway, and steps on it. He begins to whistle, then he winks. I drop my head and turn so that the wide wings hide my face and keep walking. He's just taking a risk. What for? What if I were to report him? Perhaps he was merely being friendly. Perhaps he saw the look on my face and mistook it for something else. Really, what I wanted was the cigarette. Perhaps it was a test to see what I would do. Perhaps he's an eye. And that's the first time we hear the eye term mentioned or described. Then the function of the Guardian is described later by the Handmaid. And it says, the Guardians aren't real soldiers. They're used for routine policing and other menial functions, digging up the commander's wife's garden, for instance. And they're either stupid or older or disabled or very young, apart from the ones that are eyes incognito. Again, another example that Nick did not fight in the Crusades, as per Atwood's work.
That's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so they go on to like describing Guardians that are seen in the streets, and some of them are more in the lawn, some of them are just literally standing by the cars, letting people in and out of the houses. They do have an encounter with another two Guardians, and she kind of flirts with them.
Oh, yeah, I remember this on the street when she's walking to the store, right?
Yeah, and she moves her hips. And she says, I'm ashamed of myself for doing it because none of this is the fault of these men. They're too young. Again, they're just too young to even decide what they wanted to do. They did not create Gilead. They're just giving these jobs after they take over, like everybody else.
To avoid being killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like the Guardians are sort of just like bodyguards and also just servants of the household. Like it's basically just
what Nick is doing. He's a driver.
What do you call that when there's like a servant of the house? What are they? There's like another word for that.
A butler?
Like a butler. They're like butlers almost.
Yeah.
And like gardeners.
Yeah.
Gardeners who also have to carry guns and protect the commanders is really what it is.
Yeah, they're a bit like bodyguards, but they're not out in the streets killing people.
Right.
And they're definitely not fighting in a war.
They're just like a personal household bodyguard that also just does menial tasks around the house.
Yeah, that's what's described by the book.
Yeah, which is a progression that makes logical sense from him being a driver. Started out a driver, and then Waterford brought him into his household, had him continue driving for him, but also doing tasks around the house and protecting the household.
Exactly. So this is the first encounter between the Handmaid and Nick at night after the ceremony, after the first ceremony, or one of the ceremonies. She goes downstairs to the kitchen, which is illegal for her, and finds Nick there, which is also illegal for him. Nick, the Guardian, the eye in the book, cannot walk around the house at night. He's not allowed to do that.
Wow, that's a big point.
Yeah.
So he has about the same level of permission of the other household servants.
Yep.
As Rita, as the Marthas, as even June in that context.
Exactly. And I'm just going to read the scene. Don't scream, it's all right. As if I'd scream, as if it's all right. I turn, a shape, that's all. Dark gleamed of cheekbone, devoid of colour. He steps towards me. Nick, what are you doing here? I don't answer. He too is illegal, here with me. He can't give me away, nor I him. At the moment, we're mirrors. He puts his hand on my arm, pulls me against him, his mouth on mine. What else comes from such denial? Without a word, both of us shaking, hard like two. In Serena's parlour, with dry flowers on the Chinese carpet, his thin body. A man entirely unknown. It would be like shouting. It would be like shooting somebody. My hand goes down. How about that? I could unbutton and then. But it's too dangerous. He knows it. We push each other away. Not far. Too much trust. Too much risk. Too much already.
Yep.
Which really kind of reminds me of the way the deleted scene, episode 3.
The almost kiss and the ice scene. Yeah, it is very similar. You're right.
I think it's more similar to that one. Yeah. And lastly, I'd like to add this line from the book in reference to the men on the wall, who are innocent men that Gilead has obviously killed. And she says, these men, we've been told, are like war criminals. It's no excuse that what they did was legal at the time. The crimes are retroactive. They have committed atrocities and must be made into examples for the rest. And I think it's an interesting comparison to what the writers and showrunners have done with the character of Nick. We've been told he's committed atrocities, although we have not been told what exactly it is that he has done, and we certainly haven't been shown them. As Bruce Millis said once, they only think about what's relevant to the characters, and then they show that. These atrocities apparently have never been that relevant because we have not been told what they are and we have not been shown what they are. But he's been made into an example. Men are evil, all men in Gilead, or so they say. Manipulation is a powerful tool, and I think it's very interesting, for lack of a better word, to see the writers using the same techniques as Gilead.
Yeah.
So that when I read it, I was like, this sounds exactly what they're doing, like what they're doing to Nick.
It does.
And it's very sad. So this is a segment about love, because there's been a huge debate about this story not being about love, as if love is something silly, something to be ashamed of, and not the power that makes the word spin. The book has several mentions of love and how important it is to the handmaid. There's the famous nobody dies from lack of sex, it's lack of love we die from, which obviously is said in the book. In this moment, the handmaid missus craves that love, which has been taken from her. Can I be blamed for wanting a real body to put my arms around without it? I too am disembodied. And apparently she can't be blamed because, in fact, the writers and the showrunners have been blaming her, and the fans have enjoyed and supported the love story between her and Nick, focusing on the wrong thing because they know what this story is about. And apparently it's not love.
Which is very clearly a major theme of the book.
Yeah, it's like I've got so many quotes
Yeah.
from it, yeah.
And of how to fight these systems.
Yeah.
Which several of us are going to have statements on at the end.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah. There's someone else in the book who's also against love, and that's our beloved Clip Reaper, Aunt Lydia. Love, said Aunt Lydia with distaste. Don't let me catch you at it. No mooning and joining around here, girls. Wagging her finger at us. Love is not the point.
Yeah, they sure do take a lot of the villains to tell us all that love is not the point, to then just have it not be the point at the end of the show. Great message.
Yeah. And then obviously a whole conversation between the handmaid and Fred, which is very similar to the one that's shown in the show. Fred and the handmaid have a conversation about what went wrong before Gilead. And he asks, what did we overlook? Love, I said. Love? Said the commander. What kind of love? The commander looked at me with his candid voice, eyes, falling in love, I said. Oh yeah, he said. I read their magazines. That's what they were pushing, wasn't it? But look at the stats, my dear. Was really worth it falling in love? Arranged marriages have always worked out just as well, if not better. And again, this is a different part, but it's the same sort of conversation. Love, said the commander. That's better. That's something I know about. We can talk about that. Falling in love, I said. Falling into it. We all did then, one way or another. How could he have such light of it? Sneered even, as if it was trivial for us, a thrill, a whim. It was, on the contrary, heavy going. It was the central thing. It was the way you understood yourself. If it never happened to you, not ever, you would be like a mutant, a creature from outer space.
Yeah, I actually saw somebody making a point about that extending to like self-love too. And what you said just about understanding yourself is very interesting because, yeah, just the capacity to love makes you
more human.
More human, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy thing to think that that's not an important
subject
thing when it's so important to us in the world and to being able to understand each other and empathize with each other and care about each other. Like that's what holds everything together, really.
Having somebody as well, like it's the point that her whole personality has been taken and she's so isolated.
Yeah.
It's like, that's that scene where Nick tries to break up with her. It's just like, well, at least somebody will remember me.
Yeah.
Like to have somebody that will remember you with love long after you've left.
Right.
It's important. It's how people, survive.
Yeah.
Even when they're dead.
Yeah. And a way that's so much more powerful than anything else, like any kind of, I mean, of course, personal accomplishments mean a lot, like things that you can contribute to the world, but a lot of those things are done because of love.
Yeah. We talk about it, I'm just going to be sad, so. Because Nick doesn't have anybody to love him.
Nope.
And to remember him with fondness.
And she's apparently going to write this book, but I don't understand how.
Yeah.
Based on the ending of the show, I don't know how.
She's just going to lie, obviously. Just going to lie and use her rose-tinted glasses to describe all of this, apparently.
Apparently. Maybe Nick goes to write The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. Maybe. And there's few mentions of love when she describes her encounters with Nick. There's loads of lovely things that she says about Nick. It hurts.
Yeah.
Even reading that part was really difficult. Like I read like when they first see each other and how they're like flirting and what's a girl like you doing in a place like this, which is in the show, and I love that scene. Oh, it sucks.
Yeah. It's depressing now, looking back on all of that.
Yeah. It's painted.
Yep. But it's there. I mean, it's the evidence is there in the book for all of it.
It is, yeah. That's why we're doing this, right? We're getting the evidence out.
Yep.
So the first one is when she first has sex with Nick, the one time that's mandated. So he describes it in two different ways and says that neither of them is actually what happens and that love is just an approximation. These are the two ways that she describes them. His mouth is on me, his hands, I can't wait, and he's moving already. Love. It's been so long. I'm alive in my skin again. Arms around him, falling on water softly everywhere, never ending. I knew it might only be once. The second time she describes it, she says, he begins to unbutton, then to stroke, kisses beside my ear. No romance, he says. Okay, that would have meant something else once. Once it would have meant no strings. Now it means no heroics. Don't risk yourself for me if it should come to that.
Yeah.
So she doesn't say love, but she says romance, which was similar.
Mm-hmm. This is also the scene where it's very different from, I think we talked about this in our book comparison episode.
Yeah, because they're alone.
And this is the scene.
Yeah, Serena's not in the room.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's the first time they have sex together. It is mandated, but Serena is not there forcing them. So
and he tries to like offer other options and stuff, right? Like,
yeah, like squirt into it. I think he says squirt. I could just squirt into a bottle and you can just pour it in. I think it's funny. They have they have a bit of banter as well, and it's really cute. And then she also says, neither of us says the word love, not once. It would be tempting fate. It would be romance, bad luck.
Yeah, and it takes them a while to say it to each other in the show too. Probably to mirror that in the book.
Yeah. And then yes, she goes on saying that that's not actually what happened, and that again, the way love feels is always an approximate, but that is what she feels for Nick, obviously. Love.
Very good.
And just to be clear, because this is something that Nick gets a lot of hate for, on the first mandated time together, which we just discussed, it's very different in the book. And they get to make it their own, and they get to maybe enjoy it a little bit more because Serena's not present. When it happens in the show, he says, I couldn't say no, which means that he does not have a choice on how he conducts his life. He's at the bottom of the pecking order. And this is backed up by something Margaret Atwood says in her essay's book in the chapter she calls Reflection on the Handmaid's Tale. The social structure of Gilead is sometimes thought to be in which all men have superior status and all women have lower status, but that is not true. It's an absolutist and totalitarian scheme rather than one dictated strictly by gender divisions. So the spouses of higher status men have higher status themselves, although lower status than their husbands. Lower status men have lower status than higher status women. That's how these things have worked historically. Only high status men have more than one woman available for procreation. They alone have handmaids. This too is pretty accurate as such things go. First wife rules the roost. Other, younger wives are under her thumb. The high status man procreates with all of them, if he can manage it. Lower status men have to make do with econo wives, like Eden from Nick, who have to perform all the functions that at higher levels would be carried out by several women. First wives for social occasions, mistresses and concubines, or second wives for sex. Servants of housekeeping. So it goes in the world of the Handmaid's Tales, because so it has often gone in the real world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's definitely how it's always felt in the show. I mean,
Yeah,
there are many examples of Nick not being able to.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that, like, that's how he's introduced in, like, that's the word that they use for him, lower status man.
Yeah.
That hasn't been married yet. And when he does get married, it's not a choice that he has. Like,
no.
And then again, it's really frustrating because that's one of the things Eric Touchman has used to vilify him, saying like that was one of his promotions, like he sought out like he didn't seek that out. Like he did not.
He didn't even know it was happening. He was standing there shocked in the moment, like that it was even happening.
Yeah, exactly. Like you showed us how that happened, and you literally said that was one of the promotions in one of the interviews, saying that he was climbing the rankings and he was seeking out power by marrying a 15-year-old that he didn't want to.
No.
And he didn't even know about.
When there's a clear path too of Fred arranging that through Serena's manipulation,
because he cared too much about June and tried to save her because she was going absolutely insane, and she almost dies that same day.
Right. Yeah, both of his promotions were
all of them
Fred trying to get rid of him, Fred trying to get him out of the way.
All of them, right? Apart from when he becomes an eye.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it because this is the book segment.
Yeah, it's not even just coming from the book. It's coming from your own show, from earlier in your own show.
And people that were in the show from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like Kira Snyder. Like, these were the interpretation you guys had for him.
Right, that you established, yeah.
This is from the creator of the characters in 2015. And she mentions on this chapter that the series is already in the works.
This is Margaret Atwood?
Yeah. So in the same chapter that I just read from, she says that this is something that's already in the works. So she mentioned this is going to be a TV show series soon. And this is in 2015. So they must have already
signed a contract or something.
Yeah, exactly. And she also must have been consulted by them on these topics and what her thoughts were about who these people were and how the social and power structure worked.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what she said about Nick. And that's why he's also introduced in the show as he is in the book about being a low status man who hasn't even been issued a woman yet. That means that he is a low status man who wasn't essential for the creation of Gilead. That does not make any sense.
And the not being issued means that he doesn't have the choice. It's something that just gets done when...
Yeah, exactly. He has no other choice about that, yeah. And again, we know that from the book as well because he is completely surprised at what happened in that ceremony when he gets married to Eden. He did not use that to climb the rankings of Gilead.
Nope.
I also wanted to talk about how people keep saying that Nick is irrelevant to the story and that we should not have paid him as much attention as we have. And I would like to say that the symposium at the end of the Handmaid's Tales book, the symposium is 14 pages long, and 6 of those pages are focused on the history in general of Gilead and how they are where they are years and years in the future. 4 of them are about the commanders, and they kind of mainly talk about Fred and Jude, who will have a large role in the Testaments. So that's 2 pages each.
Commander Judd, yeah.
Yeah, Judd. Half a page is about Serena, probably not even half, just a quarter. Half a page about Luke. Half a page is about the handmaid. And 2.5 are about Nick. So he actually talked about more in the symposium than anybody else. So again, yeah, that's how relevant he was to the book and to Atwood.
To history, yeah.
And to history.
So Megan, I think you wanted to talk a bit about the Testaments now.
Yeah, I just want to bring up, on social media, we read a lot of comments. And it seems like one big theme with people who might not like Nick is that he really isn't a part of the book or isn't mentioned. Some people are like, oh, Nick isn't even mentioned in the Testaments, and that's why they had to get rid of him. He, has no place there. And it's just, not the truth. And a lot of people also say that it could be Luke they're talking about as Nicole's father and not Nick, but it doesn't make sense if you actually read the book. And he is actually in the chapters. So I'm just going to read from the Testaments, page 186. And this is from Daisy/Nicole wondering about her parents. And she's asking, I believe it's Elijah and Ada, about her parents. And she says, my mother was a handmaid and my father. So my father was one of those, I said, a commander. The idea of him being a part of me, being inside my actual body, made me shiver. Luckily not, said Elijah, for not according to your mother, though she doesn't wish to endanger your real father by saying so, as he may still be in Gilead. So that right there is letting you know that they are talking about Nick. I mean, Luke wouldn't be still in Gilead. He never was. So this is about Nick and
he's not a commander.
And that he is not a commander, which is obviously
he should never been.
He should never have been. And it's extremely important to Nicole that he's not. From everything she's, heard about commanders is they're bad people. And they made sure to tell her no, or at least your mother, according to your mother, he's not. So June or Offred is not saying that he's a commander. And then it goes on, the Testaments, page 191, where Nicole asks more about her parents. And she says, so where is she now? My mother. Sealed documents, said Ada. The less people know, the better. So she just walked off and left me? She was up to her neck in it, said Ada. You're lucky you're alive. She's lucky too. They've tried to kill her twice that we know of, and they've never forgotten how she outsmarted them about baby Nicole. Well, what about my father? Same story as your mother. He's so deep underground, he needs a breathing tube. So right there, that's letting us know that Nick is alive and he is doing the same thing that June is doing, being in Mayday, but that he's actually in so deep, he needs a metaphorical breathing tube. So these are straight from the chapters. This is not even the symposium or the historical notes. So this is like canon. He's alive and he's in the resistance in the Testaments. So there was no reason for him to blow up on a plane.
Yeah. He ended up the way he ended up in the show, yeah.
And then the last is honestly, I think the most important, and we can talk about this, but I feel like it's so important. It's in the symposium, the epilogue, and it's page number 415. And it's about the inscription of the statue of Becca. And they go on to say the inscription would appear to name the principal actors cited in our materials. If this is so, our two young messengers must indeed have lived not only to tell their tale, but to also be reunited with their mother and their respective fathers and have children and grandchildren of their own. I myself take the inscription to be a convincing testament to the authenticity of our two witness testimonies. Collective memory is notoriously faulty, and much of the past sinks into the ocean of time to be drowned forever. But once in a while, the waters part, allowing us to glimpse a flash of hidden treasure, if only for a moment. Although history is rife with nuance, and we historians can never hope for a unanimous agreement, I trust you will be able to concur with me at least in this instance. The statue inscription says, in loving memory of Becca, Aunt Immortelle. This memorial was erected by her sisters Agnes and Nicole and their mother, their two fathers, their children and their grandchildren, and in the recognition of the invaluable services provided by A.L. A bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Love is as strong as death. And right there, to me, that is the most significant thing that the historians found to tie these two girls' stories to The Handmaid from The Handmaid's Tale. Without the statue, they wouldn't have really had, that's why he says it's such a treasure.
Margaret Evan made a point of yes, this is very specifically.
This is like the find of all finds. This is actually here. We can see it, the inscription.
There's evidence of it, yeah.
This is like, shall we say, the smoking gun, like the thing that
is not ambiguous.
Yeah, that ties them, these girls, Hannah and, Nicole, to June, the handmaid.
In the first book, yeah.
Yeah. That's how they tie these all in, through Aunt Lydia, that's how they get to know that these are June's children. So, the symposiums are so important. And I really wish were taken into consideration. And I really wish that the showrunners took care of that and gave them justice, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, oh my God, is there a bit where I seem to remember that Nicole or maybe Hannah finds, well, no, I think Aunt Lydia leaves like the family tree, and that also has them both having like different fathers.
Yep. Yes.
There's a bit of that, right?
Yeah, and I don't have the page mark, but there is. So you're talking about when like Hannah is reading in the files.
Yeah, I think Aunt Lydia leaves like one of the files.
Yep. And that's how they piece together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's two different fathers. Yes.
Yeah, it's very clear in the book. And that, again, is not in the symposium, it's in the book.
Yeah.
That is said that both of the girls have the same mother, but they have a different parents. It is
different father.
Sorry, yes. It isn't Luke.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she goes into great detail to make sure it's plural.
Yeah.
Fathers. Meaning, no, they don't intend that Luke is also Nicole's father, like they're trying to kind of say.
Well, and there's also a place where Agnes is praying for Nicole's father.
Yes.
I think it's when Nicole is like feverish, right?
Yeah.
And it's on page 381 of the Testaments. It says, "Dear God," I said, "may we accept the past with all its flaws. May we move forward into a better future in forgiveness and loving kindness. And may we each be thankful for our sister. And may we both see our mother again and our two different fathers as well." And it goes on from there, but that's just the part that references Luke and Nick.
Yeah. Our two different fathers. Not that Luke is the one and only.
Well, he is now.
Not canon, though. Not canon.
No, well, no. We'll always have the books.
Oh, somebody needs to actually make it according to the books.
We have the movie.
We do. Hey, that.
You know, as the way things go these days, it'll be remade in a decade and maybe they'll get it right.
Oh, good.
In my idea, they'll do a reboot.
Can't wait for somebody to do it right.
Yeah. I mean,
hey, they did it good until it didn't.
It would have been really difficult to make it wrong, but again, there we go.
Here we go.
The blue preem was really good. So I don't know how they got it wrong, but
it was great until it wasn't. I mean, we can't deny seasons 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
How great they were. But unfortunately, things have to go off the rails.
Yeah.
Such is life.
Yeah.
For my part, I would like to say this last bit that we have heard far too many times, not only by other members of the audience, but sadly also from writers and showrunners, that we only like Nick for his looks. It's something that has even been written into the show with a conversation between June and Moira in episode 7 of this final season. We have already discussed how problematic and disrespectful this is, not just to women in general, but to Max and Gail as well. But I'd also like to remind everybody that Nick, as most of the characters introduced in season 1, are pre-existing characters from a much acclaimed, much loved book that has been around for 4 decades. I read the book when I was in secondary school 20 years ago and fell in love with the story and Atwood's style of writing. It was that I can recall my first encounter with a speculative fiction, and I have loved it since. These types of novels often depict very difficult and dark subjects, as they usually take place in dystopian worlds. And in most of them, love and the light and hope it provides serves as a beautiful lull in the horrors within. The sole reason I started watching the show was because of my love for the book. I strongly hope they would stay loyal to Margaret Atwood's work. The reason I and many others believed and loved Nick wasn't because of how hot the actor they cast to play Nick was. It was because he had always meant to be the good guy in the source material. These writers and the people in charge of the show used this pre-existing fan base with the promise of making this literary masterpiece justice. They strung us along with the much-dragged love triangle, even though this was never a love story. And then, right at the end, made fun of us for believing they would follow through with the story they took from Atwood. This is why we feel betrayed, is the disrespect to the people that have kept them employed for many years. We did not make this Nick up. The creator of this story did. In the novels, Nick is the major operative, is the reason the Handmaid escapes, and his daughter is instrumental to the collapsing of Gilead. In the novel, he is not an evil commander. He is not even a commander at all. In the novels, he gets a happy ending and gets to see his daughter and his grandchildren grow up. In the novel, love matters, as love is as strong as death, and our love for this character, even when they have tried to extinguish it, will not end.
That was beautiful. I'm literally about to cry.
Oh,
lovely. Thank you.
I hope it makes sense. Sorry.
It does. No, it was lovely. I was literally sitting here like, fuck you.
Oh no. It's so annoying.
I feel like my entire personality is just saying fuck you through tears right now.
Oh no. I just literally like the last weeks and so when we said we was going to do it, I've literally pretty much reread the whole book. I was like, this is so frustrating. There's literally nothing in it that would even imply that he's this horrible person, and it's just so frustrating because I did watch the show from the very beginning because of my love for the book.
Yeah.
And I knew Nick was the good guy. I was like, I've been shouting and screaming at people. That's like, no, he's not. Like, yes, he is. And no, we're wrong. He's not.
I think we're right. The show is wrong.
I know.
That's what we have to decide.
We should stick to book canon.
Book canon all the way. Yes. Book canon in seasons 1 through 4. Those are my canon.
I can't watch them anymore.
I mean, I
can't.
can't. I haven't tried to watch. No, you're right.
It just doesn't feel right. 'Cause you just feel like she's just.
Yeah, you feel like it's all a lie now when you watch it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm assuming I haven't tried to watch any of it. It's so baffling to me that I'm sure it's just that they didn't care and the shock was more interesting, but it's like, how can you not see that doing this ruins everything that came before it? You know? And we all felt that. Like immediately I was just like, oh, well, everything is a lie now.
Yeah, because again, it doesn't really make sense to me. The fact that this been, again, they keep saying that this is not about love, but literally the main thing, apart from season 3, it's always been, they've been such a big part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And the love triangle, like they dragged that purposely.
Yep.
And then you're going to say, okay, well, these big part of it, it was all a lie. You know, he's always been horrible. We've been lying to you. You've just been seeing these through a blind love for him. And it's not true.
Nope.
And you're like, okay, but how am I going to go back now and believe what you told us? Like, you know, because they're so clever. They're like, oh, yeah, we wanted you to think that. I was like, okay, well, we know now. So why would I rewatch a show that's horrible?
Yeah. Why would I rewatch it and think like, oh, she's just been being brainwashed and tricking herself into loving him because she needs protection and she's using him the whole time? Why would I want to see that love story? That's not a love story.
But there's a love story. This is when it just makes no sense because they're like, no, it's not our love.
The way that they're telling us.
Well, you're being silly. But now it's a love story between Serena and June. And just okay, so which one is it? Which one is it? Is it a love story or is it not a love story? Because you guys are not making any sense. She keeps saying it's not about love. Don't focus on the love. And they go like, oh, yeah, the love story.
Juliet
the
and Juliet.
love story is Juliet and Juliet. I was like, okay, then. So it is a love story.
Right. It is about love, just not healthy love.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, yeah.
Great message.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a statement I'm going to read. Back in season 1, episode 5, there's a scene between June and Fred in his office where Fred delivers 2 lines that I keep thinking about now. The first one is when Fred tells June that women are fulfilling their biological destinies through Gilead by having children, and what else is there to live for? June replies soulfully that love is the counter-argument to Fred, but Fred responds by laughing at her and saying, love isn't real. It was never anything more than lust with a good marketing campaign. June's bold reply to this was, maybe for you, but not for me, showing us not only how important love is to June, but introducing the concept of love as armor. Fred ends this scene by saying, every love story is a tragedy if you wait long enough, a line that felt like a dare to me at the time, a purposeful invitation to prove him wrong. Later, at the end of the same episode, when June chooses to go to Nick's apartment on her own, this was such a powerful scene for so many of us because I believe part of what she was doing in that moment was choosing not to accept what Fred had said, to fight against that, because love in any form is the most important thing to her. And it is rebellion in a pure form, taking back something they tried to steal from her and from everyone who has been oppressed by Gilead, something that makes us uniquely human, that gives us the will to survive. Lack of love is the way a place like Gilead comes to exist and to coldly thrive in darkness. The fight for love was the fight I thought I was watching all this time. Love for your friends, your family, your children, yourself, for every living being. And the defiant, beautiful, complicated, deep romantic love that used to exist between Nick and June. This was the counter to Fred, to Gilead, to Serena, to all of their oppressors. This was the way to win. Nick tries to end things with June in season 1, episode 8, afraid for her life. She tells him some of my favorite lines of dialogue in the entire show, that it isn't too dangerous to be together, because even if they die for it, not choosing their love means letting Gilead win. At least someone will remember me. At least someone will care when I'm gone. At the end of this episode, June carves the phrase, "You are not alone," into the wood wall inside her closet. Love is not only rebellion, it is the antidote to isolation and to the type of loneliness that can decay from the inside out. June knew this then, and she held on to it in the face of everything that was screaming for her to give up. Even the June of season 6, episode 9 delivers a choose love speech to Commander Wharton, the man who actually murdered the women at Jezebel's. Some part of June still believes that love is kryptonite to Gilead, but has she reached the point where she is now only capable of using it as an echo of what she used to believe, just to manipulate others? This nihilistic message is so damaging. There's now nothing hopeful in the show to balance all the rape and oppression, because Nick and June's story has been reduced to a woman who used a man for protection, then used him for his position, which he was saddled with in large part because of his actions to help her to begin with. And while they made us believe she loved him at the start, she now looks back on that and doesn't think of it as real love. So I won't see it that way anymore either. The conclusions for every other character also fell so flat. When you're saying forgiveness is only okay to give to a woman, even if she's a rapist, abusive physically and mentally, and stands by the ideals that originally helped to enslave and reduce other women to property with no rights. Every single aspect of this ending feels aimed at subtly proving that Gilead was actually right, that Fred was right. We were so sure they wouldn't falter this far from the source material or give us these beautiful moments and this masterful showcase of love in the midst of barbaric darkness, just to say it was never real when they threw it back in our faces at the last minute. I think of all these beautiful scenes we had throughout the first 4 seasons and how they are meaningless now, because it wasn't love and hope. It appears to have only been June manipulating Nick's love for her and telling him fake, kind things in a completely misguided and cruel attempt to keep him invested and therefore keep herself safe with whatever means he had at his disposal. Even the beautiful flashback in episode 6 feels like this to me now. We're being told that this bled into a confusing feeling for June at the time that she now recognizes for what it was. Not love, but some other much more brutal and bleak form of survival. But love was always meant to be survival, because as June herself says, it is not lack of sex we die from, it is lack of love. Nick loved her with everything he had, but none of that matters because they want us to believe this tragic, complex, self-loathing character was actually an evil man like Fred. Nick was right to think he was nothing because the show sees him as nothing, and so does June. This is the most cruel message they could have left us with, that Fred was right, love is just rose-colored glasses, it isn't real. If that's true, there's nothing left in this world to fight for. So we can accept what they gave us in the end, or we can choose to fight with the truth that it will never be wrong to love with everything you have, even if everything and everyone in the world is trying to stop you, to convince you that you're wrong. June once delivered this exact message to Nick, and even after she abandoned it, he lived it until his last breath. So we can too. Well, that is a wrap on this episode, our record-breaking longest episode of all time, and also on The Handmaid's Tale overall for our podcast. Thank you all again so much for sticking with us, and we hope you'll join us on the next show. Thanks for listening, and we're going to let Nick Blaine from Season 2, Episode 5 close us out.
Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. Does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love delights not in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, endures all things. Love never fails.